perilous path toward redemption or devastation. Hardy sat in the office of an old friend, feeling nervous about his meeting. Rabbi William Goldberg had retired and, after feeling restless, decided to start a counseling practice focused on marriage and relationship issues. His work with veterans had been fulfilling, but the daily reminders of the struggles from war took a toll on him. After serving in active duty and 25 years in the reserves, he retired honorably with good benefits. He felt that God guided him toward this new path and didn't want to let anyone down. A native of New York, he surprised his friends and family when he chose to move to Montgomery, Alabama after retirement. He loved living near the coast, where the winters were mild and easier on his arthritis. He was pleasantly surprised by the size of the Jewish community there. A friend had told him that they had been in the area since the late 1800s. He still found it amusing to say Shalom Y'all, even after some time. Hardy Wilkes was one of his most memorable clients. Always cheerful and friendly, he didn't match the troubling background that Rabbi Bill had read about. As they worked together, Bill realized that Hardy had faced a tough childhood, which had shaped some of his views. Even though he tried hard to improve himself, he sometimes struggled to shake off old habits, especially when under stress. Rabbi Bill, as Hardy called him, spent about a year together with Hardy, supporting him through physical therapy and counseling. He introduced Hardy to playing the organ as a way to focus and relax, and he was amazed by how quickly Hardy picked it up. When Hardy played, it was clear he put his heart and soul into the music. They often began their sessions with a few moments of music before talking. Bill was surprised by Hardy's career and married life. Years ago, he would never have imagined Hardy as a lawyer in expensive clothes or actually being married, especially to a wealthy woman who was the daughter of the owner of his firm. The phrase married well certainly applied to Hardy, though it wasn't shocking to see him in need of support. Problems in marriage were a common theme in his work. When they met, they shook hands and hugged. Bill took a moment to observe Hardy, noting his longer hair and short beard. This look was different from the smooth-faced, neatly groomed Hardy he remembered. Although it didn't seem messy, it gave the impression of someone who was a bit carefree. "So, Rabbi, enjoying the sunny South?" Hardy asked. "Yeah, Hardy, what can I say? I can't get enough of grits. You can't find that in a New York deli," Bill replied with a smile. "Believe it or not, there's a really great bagel shop just around the corner. It feels like a little slice of heaven." They talked for a while about friends and work. Then Bill leaned back in his cozy chair. He found a desk too formal and preferred the comfort of his recliner. He changed the furniture around based on what he wanted to achieve in the meeting. "So, this isn't just a friendly visit. How did you find me?" he asked. "Major Stein told me about you. Just so you know, I see him twice a month for a 3-hour session, and yes, it is related to this," Hardy replied. Bill made a mental note to call Stein later. He knew Stein was still in the military and sensed that something was off. "I'll gladly help you, but why me? It takes almost 2 hours to drive here. I'm sure there are qualified people in Birmingham," Bill said. "2 reasons. I know you, and I think the long drive will annoy my wife," Hardy explained. "Hardy, I need to be clear. If these sessions are just to bother your wife, I'm not interested. I don't need the business that badly. Let's focus on why you're here and what made you want counseling." Hardy spent the next 2 hours sharing everything he could. He talked about his time in Paris and what happened at home, including his feelings. Bill kept a neutral expression on his face, but was surprised by what he heard. Hardy spoke about how he tried to resist his wife's advances initially, their relationship journey, the fights at the end, and how he felt disrespected. "Even without the cheating, we were on the wrong track. She made promises I realized she would never keep. The cheating broke my trust completely, and I refused to worry about when it might happen again. Better to go our separate ways." "Do you still love her?" Bill asked. "I'm tired of people asking me that. Yes, I can't seem to stop caring for her, but I hope that with time I can move on," Hardy replied. "So, you don't see a chance for getting back together? Why bother with the sessions then?" Bill asked. "Court ordered and I can't skip them. I'm hoping you'll see how hopeless it is and end them early," Hardy said. Bill leaned back and turned on the massage feature of his chair. He loved this chair. "From what you've told me, I don't want to see you again. This seems like it might get messy, and I don't need that in my life. However, to be fair, give me your wife's number. I'll arrange a session with her 2 hours at least. After that, we'll see." And just to clarify, this session and hers won't count toward your required visits. Take it or leave it, Hardy. Remember, you came to me for help." Hardy debated, but ended up agreeing to the terms. Meanwhile, Gwen was frustrated with the heavy traffic on I-65. The speed limit was 70, but she was barely moving at 25. She couldn't help but smile at how Hardy had played her with the counselor, JT. He was a bit annoyed too, but he reminded himself that they had agreed he could make the choice, and no one mentioned where it should take place. Bill hung up the phone, smiling. Mrs. Wilkes had called 3 times, which was a good sign. It looked like one of the partners was truly committed to the counseling. She arrived 20 minutes late, apologizing as she walked in. The short man with a beard and a cap didn't match her idea of a counselor. Sorry, the traffic was terrible. I'll plan better next time." "Just relax, Mrs. Wilkes. You're too tense to think clearly right now. Let's do some breathing exercises to help you relax. Close your eyes." For the next 5 minutes, she focused on his calm voice, breathing in and out as he guided her. When they finished, she felt much more at ease. "Thank you, doctor. What should I call you, doctor or counselor?" "Bill is fine, and I'm not a doctor, just a licensed therapist. Would you prefer Mrs. Wilkes or Gwen?" "Oh, it's been so long since anyone called me Mrs. Wilkes that I enjoy it. But Gwen would probably help me relax more." "Okay, Gwen. What do you want from me?" The question caught her off guard. "I want you to help me win my husband back." "Why?" "Why what? Why do you want him back?" "Because I love him, I miss him, I need him." "I'm sorry to be straightforward, but according to your husband, you weren't faithful to him, treated him poorly, and went against your family plans. If that's true, it sounds more like you were just comfortable with him as a safety net." "That's not true. I ignored him, but I was caught up in a big project that took all my attention." "So, are you saying that once your project was finished, you would have gone back to being a caring wife? What if another big project came up? Would he have been set aside again? Did you mean to start the family you promised him?" "You're making me sound terrible. I was supposed to move into a new department at work that would allow me to be home more. We could have worked on our marriage." "But didn't your boss, your father, kind of push you into that, which led to Hardy's absence for a while? He told me you lashed out, saying he and your father plotted to change your role and made you spend more time at home. Then when he came back, he found you with someone else." "I explained that already. I was really taken advantage of." "I find your choice of words interesting. Was it more or less of an advantage?" "I was under the influence. He took advantage of my state. Honestly, I now see I put myself in that situation, but it still wasn't right. Even while I was out of it, I tried to make him stop." "Why didn't you report it?" "Remember, I'm a lawyer. It would never have worked for me. I had been in a similar situation with him before and willingly took the drugs. Deep down, I didn't think I would win, and I didn't want to put my family through that pain. Just admitting to drug use would have ruined my career and embarrassed my family. It would show everyone what kind of person I really was." "Can you tell me, Gwen, what kind of person are you? What were you like before this started, and are you different now?" She sat quietly for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "Before, I wasn't really grown up. I was just a spoiled girl acting like I was. My mother cheated often, and my father got tired of it and divorced her. I spent nearly a year with her before going back to my dad, and she wasn't a good role model. My dad was happy to have me back and tried to give me whatever I wanted. I learned to say, 'I want,' and to expect it to happen. I didn't understand how the world really worked. Hardy tried his best to help me see it, and my dad did too. In fact, he begged me not to marry Hardy, not because he didn't like him, but because deep down, he didn't approve of me. Did you find happiness with Hardy? Be honest." She frowned, concentrating hard. "Yes, overall, I was happy. Of course, there were things I wished could be different, like every spouse has. But when he looked at me with those warm gray eyes and that goofy smile, telling me he loved me in that soft, almost musical way, I would just melt. He loved me completely, and I knew it." "When did you start to feel distant from him?" "Who said I felt distant?" "He did. He wondered why you didn't seem good enough for him anymore and why you seemed embarrassed by him at times. Is there any truth to that?" She lowered her head. "Looking back, I have to admit there were times when I wished he was a little more sophisticated, a bit less simple. He didn't like most of the people I spent time with, seeing them as fake and boring. Sadly, I now think he was right. I didn't care much for his friends either. They were from rough backgrounds, and I found them scary, though they were genuine, and that scared me even more. I came to see later that his southern charm, while real, was often used to get what he wanted. He adjusted how he acted based on the situation. It's one reason he did so well in Boston. People would listen to him and watch him, thinking that because he spoke slowly and moved slowly, he was slow. Next thing they knew, they were left behind, thinking about how they underestimated him. So, you're proud of him then? Yes, very much. He takes on tough cases that no one else would for free, thanks to my dad. He uses every resource to bring justice for those people. He chooses carefully, only helping those he believes are innocent. Sometimes he would take cases where the person was guilty but felt the punishment was too harsh. His success is impressive. Have you told him you're proud of him? Not really. His cases were hard to hear about, and I didn't feel strong enough to listen. Bill glanced at the clock. Mrs. Wilkes, we have about 40 minutes left, but I'm happy to stay a bit longer if you want. Let's make some coffee and relax for a few minutes. They stood up to stretch and make the coffee. Bill had brought a selection of bagels. Gwen hadn't eaten since lunch and had been too nervous to eat much then, worrying about the session. The bagel was very satisfying. They joked that since they were in the South, he should have brought some biscuits instead. Once they were seated again, Bill asked if he could review what they had discussed, just to be sure he didn't overlook anything. She nodded. Okay, so far we've talked about how you were a spoiled child who didn't understand how the real world worked and got everything she wanted without effort or responsibility. Now who are you now? Have you changed, and why? Gwen took a deep breath. For better or worse, I'm definitely not the same person I was. I'm not a girl anymore. I've grown into a woman. I was upset with my dad for sending me here and stopping my money. I really hated it for the first couple of months and cried myself to sleep a lot. I spent all my money and almost didn't have enough left for food or gas. But then I started to learn. I made a budget and stuck to it. I've always wanted to succeed, probably because of my dad, so I threw myself into my work. It was a big change from dealing with people in fancy suits over dinner to working with those from difficult backgrounds in small, rough rooms. I learned to tell the difference between liars and scared kids. I helped put away drug dealers, thieves, and other criminals. I knew they wouldn't like me for what I did, but I did it anyway because society is better with them off the streets. I became really good at my job and earned a reputation for being tough but fair. The biggest reason I changed was meeting my family. I was an only child with no relatives except for my father. My mother had a sister, but I haven't seen her since I was 8. At first, it was my husband's family, his grandfather, Joshua Hardy, and enough Wilkes to fill a small town. I would eat Sunday dinner with them about every other week, and they accepted me. Some may not have liked what I did in my past, but they were kind enough not to show it. It was one of the best experiences I ever had. These people were not trying to climb the social ladder or push any agenda. They just welcomed me as part of their family and treated me kindly. Suddenly I was Aunt Gwen, receiving lots of attention from the younger ones and warmth and even some love from the older ones. Then I met my great-aunt. Did I mention my grandmother came from Birmingham? That introduced a whole new group of cousins. I'm now connected to many people in a 4-county area, including the local community. That's a story for another time, but the key point is I came here as an outsider and now feel like family. I didn't tell my dad, but no matter what happens with Hardy, I'm not going back to Boston. This is my home now. She paused for a moment, feeling emotional. Bill understood her feelings. Since he had been in town, people often asked if he was related to someone they knew. At first, he felt annoyed, thinking they assumed all Jews were connected. After a few weeks, he realized that no matter who you were, forming family bonds was as easy as talking about the weather. What I'm trying to say is that I've matured. I'm ready to take responsibility for my choices. The mistakes of a young girl are not the same as the feelings of a more grown-up woman. I know I might never win him back, Bill, but I need him to see that if he does come back, he won't find the same person he once knew, but a new and improved version of me. I want him to understand that I don't want our old relationship back. I want something better and stronger. Please help him see that. And no matter what happens, I will always love him. Bill was impressed and agreed to work with them. He wanted to meet with each of them individually before having a joint session. His parting words were, Make sure Hardy attends all his sessions, and I'll ensure that the individual sessions are included in our plan." Rabbi Bill called Major Stein and had a long talk about Mr. Hardy Wilkes. The understanding was that Hardy was making progress and should be carefully monitored. Major Stein sat in thought. After a moment, he decided to make a call. Hardy had canceled his next session, saying he would be out of the country. Maybe now was the time to speak with someone else. He had planned to talk to Hardy's wife, and while Hardy was hesitant, he agreed it could be helpful. "Mrs. Wilkes, good morning. My name is Ben Stein, actually Major Stein. I don't know if you are aware, but I'm working with Hardy as part of a follow-up on his military history through the local VA. I want to meet with you, and Hardy agrees. He can't make his appointment this week, so I was hoping you could take it instead. Will you? Thank you. Let me give you the address. You can look it up online. It's Friday afternoon if that works for you. Thanks again." Gwen took the day off from work. Her schedule was light because of the Escobar trial, and she had a few vacation days available. She told Paul she needed to go out of town unexpectedly, and he let her leave without any trouble. Maybe she's going somewhere to relax, he thought. That might be good for her. She was grateful to her dad for putting money in her checking account. She had updated him about the counseling sessions and her visit to Major Stein. When he learned she planned to drive 7 hours to Fort Stewart alone, he insisted she fly instead. "Dad, I can't afford the plane ticket, the rental car, or a hotel," she explained. "You can now. I'll add the money. Think of it as a gift from a worried dad. If you had let me access your trust fund, we wouldn't be in this situation. I had my reasons. It's important for me to use the money for this year. It's only a couple of months left. I'll take the money as a loan and pay you back. That's the only way I'll accept it." He agreed, feeling proud. The flight to Savannah was smooth. It was her first time on a plane in over a year, and the small jet made her a bit uneasy. The rental car seemed odd to her too, feeling large after a year in her smaller car. It felt even stranger on base. She had never seen so many uniforms in one spot. Even though her dress was modest, just below the knees and with a high neckline, it was clear she stood out, attracting attention. She was relieved to find the building easily. Major Stein welcomed her in the lobby and led her to his office. "Don't worry, we won't be interrupted. Can I get you something to drink?" he asked. "No, thank you. I don't think more liquids would help ease my nerves," she replied. He quickly reassured her. "Please, this is just a casual chat between two people who care about your husband. How is he doing? Do you talk often?" She laughed softly. "No, I had to go to court just to get him to talk to me. We are starting marriage counseling with a judge's help. I hope for the best. Can you share how he has been mentally? That's your area of expertise, right?" Instead of answering, he surprised her by asking, "Mrs. Wilkes, has your husband been in any fights lately? I mean physically." "He had a disagreement with a cousin and got into a fight. I hear he hurt him pretty badly. It was a family matter." "Did it involve you in any way?" He pressed gently. "Yes, his cousin and another person threatened me. The one he hurt only involved grabbing me. It wasn't anything more than that." "Anything else?" "Not that I know of." Fortunately, Hardy never told Gwen about the fight in the cell. "Mrs. Wilkes, please know that whatever you tell me here stays between us. Can you explain what led to your separation? Please share all the details. It might be important." Gwen hesitated, feeling ashamed, but told her story once more. "Before the incident, was he ever aggressive or physical with you?" "No. Actually, once I nearly walked into traffic and Hardy pulled me back so hard that I got bruises on my arm. He was so apologetic afterwards, saying sorry for weeks. Until that morning, after almost 3 years together, including our dating period, he was always calm and reasonable. Like any couple, we had disagreements, but he never raised his voice or acted out. That morning, it was like he turned into someone else." "How much do you know about his military background?" "He told me he served in Iraq, did 2 tours, including the initial invasion. I know he was injured because I've seen the scars, but he never talks about it." "Mrs. Wilkes, much of what he did is classified, so I can't provide details. Your husband has a specialized set of skills, and he was excellent at his job. He could have become an officer. His ability to quickly assess situations and plan was impressive. However, he struggled with teamwork. Some people feared he might get them hurt. Once he set his mind on a goal, nothing could stop him." We ran numerous tests on your husband, both physical and psychological. We tested his reactions under different levels of stress. He's truly one of a kind. Are you familiar with the term fight or flight, Mrs. Wilkes? Good. In moments of intense stress, people feel threatened, and their bodies release adrenaline to prepare for action, either to fight or to escape, giving them a surge of energy. Your husband's adrenal glands can release 6 to 10 times the usual amount of adrenaline into his system. It's extremely rare, and it's often seen among certain groups, like some people of Scandinavian descent and folks from the southern U.S. No one is entirely sure why. This could explain old stories of Viking warriors or rugged fighters. Think of it like people who take a strong stimulant. They might not feel pain even if they injure themselves. Medical professionals have a nickname for it: Hulk syndrome, after the comic book character who transforms due to intense emotion. That's your husband. He was in control for years, but the betrayal reawakened something in him. Do you know I have him on medicine to help control his excitement? He doesn't like it, but he takes it anyway. He paused, giving her time to understand. She used the moment to ask a question. Sir, why is the military involved? No charges were filed, and this was kept quiet. He tried to sound encouraging. We're the military, Mrs. Wilkes. We have our methods. We just want to make sure your husband is safe and not a risk to himself or anyone else. Do you think he poses a risk to society? Not really, if he keeps taking his medicine and avoids stressful situations. Do you believe he can do that? Life is stressful. I think if he continues to see me for a while and you work on your marriage, he will be fine. Bill Goldberg is a good man and a skilled counselor. More importantly, he knows your husband and has his trust. I wish you both the best. He truly loves you. You know that, right? If anyone can help him feel balanced, it's you. You just need to help him trust you again. By the way, do you know why your husband is in Mexico? I didn't know he was out of the country. We're not sharing details about our lives right now. They talked for another hour, him asking questions, and her responding with her own inquiries. He told her about his efforts to save the troops in a small valley, leaving nothing out. To her embarrassment, she didn't realize he had 3 Purple Hearts, several letters of commendation, and a silver star with oak leaf clusters. Another important part of her husband's life that she was unaware of. Feeling mentally drained, she returned to her hotel and took a nap. When she woke up, she got dressed and thought about how to spend her evening. She decided to take a walk by the ocean, something she hadn't done in a year. The sound of the waves was soothing. Paula Dean's restaurant, Lady and Sons, was nice and the food was good. However, she found herself comparing it to the home-cooked meals she had during family Sunday dinners and concluded that homemade food was better. Meals made by strangers, no matter how tasty, couldn't match the warmth of home-cooked dishes shared with family. It encouraged her to try harder. Back at the hotel, she chose to have 1 drink at the bar. She hadn't had much alcohol except for an occasional beer she shared with Joshua, and memories of a recent drink mix still lingered in her mind. There was a band that had just started playing. She sat and listened to a couple of songs, tapping her foot. The place was crowded. Hunter Airfield was nearby, and Fort Stewart was just over an hour away, making Savannah the largest city around. Gwen had a group of people around her, asking her to dance and buy her drinks. She kept shaking her head no, trying to politely refuse. The crowd parted when a short woman with red hair moved to the bar next to her. She nodded to Gwen while she waited for her drink. "It's not very nice of you, you know," Anne said suddenly. "What do you mean?" Gwen asked. "Coming in here and turning the guys down. A lot of them are far from home and feeling lonely. They are all young and looking for attention. You're new here, and turning them down is like showing a steak to a hungry dog." Gwen felt uneasy. "I just wanted a drink and then go back to my room for sleep." "Is there someone waiting for you up there?" "No, I'm here for work. I'll leave tomorrow." "Then why not stay a little longer, dance a few times, and give the guys something to dream about? It can be fun." "That's exactly what I'm worried about. I tend to make bad choices when I try to have fun. I'm working hard to save my marriage now because of that. We're finally getting close to talking again, and I don't want to ruin that." "Do people here know about your husband?" "Some do. Like I said, I've made enough mistakes in my life. I have too much to lose now." Anne extended her hand. "I'm Anne." Gwen shook her hand. Gwen. Nice to meet you, Gwen. Are you sure you can't stay a bit? I could use a friend to join me. The band was about to start playing again, and a tall young man in a uniform approached Anne to ask her to dance. Sorry, soldier. Not tonight. But my friend Gwen might dance with you. Just so you know, she's married and wants to stay that way, so no funny business or she's out of here. Got it? The man stood very straight at her serious tone. Got it, ma'am. Good. Anne turned to Gwen. I'll get us a table and watch your purse. Go dance. He'll be respectful, I promise. So Gwen danced and enjoyed herself. When she returned to the table, Anne found it was crowded. She handed Gwen her purse. My turn to dance now? Gwen watched Anne with admiration as she danced so gracefully. Drinks were bought, but when they saw Gwen wasn't drinking, they stopped spending their money. When Anne came back, she took their purses and asked the bartender to keep them safe. Gwen looked puzzled. People often hang around military places looking to take advantage. Now, we can dance without worry. So, they danced. Gwen only danced 2 slow dances, one with a young man who looked very young because she thought he would be safe. But he was all over the place, and she finally broke free and returned to her table. He didn't ask her to dance again. The other dance was with an older man. He seemed polite and was a great dancer. He was wearing a band on his finger, and since she hadn't taken off her rings, she felt safe. She kissed his cheek to thank him, and he blushed but smiled warmly. Gwen ended up dancing the night away. It felt good to let go. Before she knew it, the night was over. The band had finished playing, and everyone was enjoying their last drink. Anne was watching over Gwen closely, almost as if it was her job to make sure she was okay. Gwen had finally given in and accepted a few more drinks. The guys had kept buying, thinking it would help her relax. Most of the drinks, however, sat untouched on the table. Now that the night was winding down and she was heading straight to her room, she finished a few more drinks and felt quite tipsy. When Gwen stood and swayed a bit, Anne quickly stepped in to steady her. Come on, let's get you to your room, Anne said. It seemed like a good idea, so Anne put her arm around Gwen's waist and fished the room key out of her purse. Together they headed to the elevators. The ride was quiet, but Anne noticed that Gwen had tears in her eyes. What's wrong, Gwen? She asked gently. I miss my husband. He should be here, not you, Gwen said, her voice breaking. We used to go out and he would always take care of me. Now I feel so alone and frustrated. I just don't think I'll ever get him back. As Gwen sobbed, she clung to Anne for comfort. Anne rubbed her back gently, trying to offer some support. Both of them had enjoyed a bit too much to drink, and as they made their way down the hall, they leaned on each other for balance. A few times Anne dropped the keycard. Finally, they nearly tumbled into the room when the door opened, giggling like old friends. Gwen looked at the minibar. Want a nightcap? She asked. Anne smiled. One more couldn't hurt, right? One more didn't seem to be an issue, but a few too many did. By then, Anne realized she was not in a good position to drive, and Gwen was almost asleep on her feet. Anne helped her to the bathroom, got her ready for bed, and tucked her in. Standing back, Anne admired the peaceful scene. Though she usually preferred dating men, she had a soft spot for women too, especially in the right moment. Slowly, Anne began to take off her own clothes, planning to use the other bed, but then changing her mind. She wasn't going to do anything while Gwen was out cold, but if they woke up together, who knew what might happen? A warm body next to her sounded much nicer than sleeping alone. As she pulled back the covers, Gwen's purse slipped to the floor, spilling its contents. Anne gathered everything up, and as she opened Gwen's wallet, she was shocked to see a picture of Gwen with a man her husband. Something about the man seemed familiar. She held the picture up to the light, and after a moment, it clicked. Hardy Wilkes. So this was the famous wife. Anne felt relieved that she hadn't acted on her feelings. It could have been complicated. Still, she was feeling lonely. Gwen was there, and just being close for the night could be nice. She carefully got into bed, and Gwen quickly cuddled up to her. Anne fell asleep with her arms around Gwen. Sometime during the night, Anne woke up and saw they had shifted places. Now she was facing Gwen, who had her arms around her. Anne enjoyed the moment, but pushed away any temptation and fell asleep again. A loud scream jolted Anne awake. She found Gwen sitting up, holding the covers tightly. What happened last night? Gwen shouted. Anne was about to explain, but decided to have a bit of fun first. You don't remember? Wow, you were incredible. The best I've ever experienced. Your energy was amazing. I know we just met, but is it too soon to bring up feelings? Gwen screamed again and hurried to the bathroom. Anne waited a moment and followed her in. Gwen was sitting on the toilet crying. Gwen, don't worry. Nothing happened. I was just joking around. We were both drunk, and I didn't want to be alone. You hear me? Nothing happened. But when I woke up, you were so close to me, Gwen said. We were just sharing a bed, that's all. It doesn't mean anything. I was asleep. Anne stuck her tongue out playfully at Gwen. Unless you want it to mean something, I'm open to new experiences. You'd enjoy it, I promise. Gwen tried to push her out of the bathroom, but Anne stayed put. Gwen, relax. I'm just teasing. You're not thinking clearly because of your hangover. Seriously, nothing happened. And nothing will happen, so take it easy. Do you want to shower first, or should we go together? Gwen shut the door, and Anne couldn't help but laugh. After their showers, Gwen felt a bit better. They talked while getting ready. Now that she was sober, Gwen found Anne to be funny, smart, and down to earth. Are you really open to women? Gwen asked curiously. Yes, does that bother you? Not really. I probably won't see you again, so I'm just curious. What's it like being with another woman? I can't describe it well. It's like explaining the taste of an orange to someone who's only had apples. For me, it tends to be gentler and more emotional. Anne's eyes sparkled mischievously. I could show you, you know. Gwen was surprised by the response. I've thought about it before. A friend in college was interested in me. I almost went along with it a few times. If I were single, I might take you up on that offer, but I still want to be with my husband. However, if things don't work out with him, maybe I'll call you. Can I have your number? Anne quickly handed her a card. Gwen looked at it. Captain Ann Burnside, U.S. Army. Are you a soldier? Yes, I've been in the Army for 12 years. What do you do? I work in intelligence, but that's all I can share. It was past breakfast time, but Anne knew a nice spot that served brunch. Everything was going well until Anne ordered a mimosa. She noticed her friend's reaction. What's wrong? Nothing much. I just have some bad memories tied to that drink. Please enjoy it, though. Anne insisted on seeing her friend off at the airport. She held out her hand. Thanks, Gwen. It's been quite an adventure. I hope everything goes well for you. In a surprising moment, Gwen hugged the smaller woman and gave her a warm kiss. She stepped back with a smile. There, that should spark a few daydreams. I'll always remember you. I hope when you find someone special, they realize how wonderful you are. And who knows? If I don't get my husband back, I might call you. Bye. She walked away laughing. Wow, thought Anne. If anyone can handle Hardy, it's definitely her. Meanwhile, the Escobar case was reaching a crucial point, and Don Vincente was beginning to feel anxious. His attempts to influence the district attorney and the police were not working. Neither were the bribes. It was time to try a different approach. His first idea was to target the arresting officer, but that officer was experienced and had no close family. Each time Vincente tried to reach him, the officer reported it to the DEA, who wanted to take control of the case. Next, he turned his attention to the DA and their team. Since direct pressure wasn't effective, he decided to be sneaky. His first plan failed badly, leading to 2 of his associates being arrested. He knew about Gwen's past with drugs and planned to use it to his advantage. He aimed to plant a large amount of illegal substances in her car and make an anonymous tip. This would likely get her removed from the case for a while. His people began tracking her movements. She had a fairly routine life, mostly spending weekends with her husband's grandfather, which only lasted overnight. Though her complex had security cameras, he had the tools to bypass them. To reduce the risk, they chose to put the items in her car. They picked a stormy night to keep people indoors and easily opened her trunk. They placed a bag with a significant amount of substances under the spare tire, using her fingerprints that they had taken from her trash. What he didn't realize was that Gwen was being watched by more than just his associates. Hardy had gathered 8 men, 6 being cousins, to keep an eye on her. The leader and most of the group were ex-military from various backgrounds. 4 had their own vehicles, and he bought 6 more for them to use, which they could keep as a reward. These cars were all powerful. 2 people, each in separate vehicles, kept a watchful eye on her day and night. They were skilled at their task, and no one noticed them. They noticed everything around them, even filming people they found interesting. That night, they saw two men going through her trash. They took a bag with her fingerprints and later placed some drugs there. One man was from the area, and the other was from another country. Once they left, they opened the trunk and got the bag. They split the contents into two bags, one for the local man and one for the visitor. Don Vincente wanted attention, so he told local TV stations that a well-known public official would be arrested. The next morning, he watched from a limousine as Gwen arrived at work. Police surrounded her car while cameramen filmed the scene. Gwen had no clue what was happening and was quite frustrated. Because of her status, they didn't handcuff her but made her wait in the back of a police car. No drugs were found. When Don Vincente realized there were no drugs in her car, he angrily told his driver to leave. But before the driver could move, a truck drove in front and a big SUV came behind them. He felt a surge of panic, remembering similar situations where he dealt with his opponents. A young man in a suit walked up, slipped an envelope under the windshield wiper, waved, and quickly left. The truck and SUV drove off fast. The driver was frozen for a moment. "Don't just sit there. Get me that envelope," Don Vincente snapped. He ordered one of his guards to open it. Inside was a small party popper that went off with a soft bang, shooting a bit of confetti into the air. Everyone jumped at the sound. There was also a piece of paper with a bold message: "Back off." The police felt embarrassed, and the assistant chief publicly apologized, warning about making false accusations and wasting police resources. The news announcer reported, in related news, a local man with a long criminal record was arrested after police found a significant amount of drugs in his trunk. He claims he knew nothing about the drugs being in his car. They also mentioned that a foreign national was stopped on the interstate and arrested for a similar quantity of drugs, packaged the same way. The Drug Enforcement Administration showed interest in both cases. The station manager called for law enforcement to address the growing drug problem and crime coming from the border. The next day, many newspapers in Birmingham featured the same editorial. Public opinion was shifting, driven by a political action group that had ample funding. Things were getting tense for the Escobar family. Gwen didn't realize she was being watched at first. She was upset that someone had made a false report to embarrass her, but she soon put it behind her. As she was leaving the chambers, a popular spot for lawyers and court workers, 3 men approached her. 2 of them grabbed her while the third put a hood over her head. Just before it fully covered her eyes, she saw a flash of blonde rush out from the shadows, followed by shouts. Someone picked her up and started to carry her away. She tried to scream, but the hood blocked her view, and a man pressed his hand over her mouth. "Please be quiet, Aunt Gwen. I need to get you out of here." Those words made her feel safe. She wrapped her arms around him and began to cry. The man placed her in the back of a van, where another man she didn't recognize quickly checked on her. "You're okay, Miss Gwen. Just relax now. We've got you." "Who are you?" she asked. "Just family. That's all you need to know for now. We're taking you to Grandpa Hardy's house for the night. You'll be home tomorrow morning, all right?" Aunt Hildy welcomed her with open arms, helping her settle into bed and staying by her side until she calmed down. "What's happening, Aunt Hildy?" "Child, please don't ask me to share secrets." "It's about Hardy, isn't it? He's looking out for me." Hildy smiled softly. "I can neither confirm nor deny that. But how did he know when to be there? Let's just say there's a man who cares deeply for a woman. Even if he doesn't always show it, he wants her safe. Because of her actions, he has the means to help her." "Speaking of Hardy, is he okay? He didn't get hurt trying to protect me, did he?" Gwen asked quickly. "I don't think so, dear. Your cousins didn't mention any trouble, so I believe he is fine. Now get some sleep. There's ham and eggs for breakfast." After a restless night, she tried to enjoy the hearty breakfast Aunt Hildy made, but it didn't go well. Her cousins happily devoured much of it. As she was hugging them goodbye, she felt something hard at Joshua's side. When she pulled back his shirt, she saw a large revolver attached to his belt. "I want to know the truth. What trouble have I caused you?" Joshua looked a bit shy. "Sometimes, when you can't protect someone directly, it's easier to keep an eye on their relatives. We want to be safe. Don't worry. Just handle your business, and it'll all be over soon." She noticed more cousins than usual were around. "How many does Hardy have watching Grandpa and Hildy?" she asked as they drove away. "Enough. Some you won't even see. They'll be fine." When he dropped her off, he walked her inside. He gave her some advice before he left. "You will see me and a few others you know from time to time. Just don't acknowledge us. Remember, when this is all over, we will all be gone." One more question. How did Hardy know they were planning to do that last night? He didn't know. He was just getting an update from us. It was a lucky timing thing. She hugged him and asked him to thank the rest of his team for her. During lunch, Karen spoke to her. "Did you hear what happened last night at the Chambers?" Gwen was thankful her mouth was full. It gave her time to think of a response. "No, I was there but left early. What happened?" "There was some sort of fight in the back parking lot. When the police arrived, they found two guys injured badly. They wouldn't say anything, so they kept them for a few hours and then let them go." "What were they doing in the parking lot?" "The police think it was a deal that went wrong. They are showing up everywhere these days." Gwen agreed. "Yeah, you can't feel safe anywhere anymore." As they got up to leave, she asked about the counseling sessions. "We finished the individual sessions. Our first joint session is this week. I hope it goes well for you. Will Hardy be able to drive by then?" "Why wouldn't he be?" "Well, Grandpa told me this morning that Hardy hurt his arm and had a serious cut. He needed stitches and staples. He's wearing a sling now. Grandpa said he fell off a tractor while helping Joshua." Gwen felt a little dizzy. Grandpa also helped a man who had a broken leg and arm. He fell off a tractor too. Tractors can be dangerous. Things got worse. One of the cousins, who wasn't even involved, was hurt badly. In response, 6 of Don Vicente's lower-level dealers were found in a stolen van with large amounts of drugs, all taken from his couriers. Don Vicente had to fly to San Diego to start a new supply route. His situation was costing him a lot of money, and law enforcement seemed to know about his shipments before they even left the country. Very few of his major shipments were getting through. One boat, acting on a tip, was stopped with a large amount of drugs. He had a serious leak that he needed to fix quickly. Other cartels thought he was losing his hold on things and were ready to take advantage. He had always liked San Diego. While he was there talking to people and discussing plans, the name of a local lawyer came up. "You might want to keep him on retainer. He knows what we do and is okay with it. In fact, he's a customer and has invested some money. He can be smart when he isn't distracted." Alan Hovis disliked his life. He had moved west as promised, settling in San Diego. He had sent out resumes to all the major law firms, but the few interviews he got led nowhere. He was actually offered jobs 2 times, but he turned them down when he found out he had to take a drug test. Running low on money, he decided to open his own office. His situation was tough. He went from flying on jets to faraway places to now rushing to the local hospital. Things seemed to change when he defended a mid-level drug dealer, getting him off because of a legal technicality. As a thank you, the dealer gave him a little bonus, and he asked about investing. He still had $70,000 from a past settlement. He was allowed to invest $50,000 with the understanding that he would help the dealer and his friends if they ever needed legal assistance. There were times when they needed him, and he won some cases and lost others, but he always tried hard for them. They still paid him for his services. His original investment grew to almost $200,000, and he kept it going. His goal was to reach $10 million. Then he would retire to a sunny island, buy a nice house, and enjoy life. One day, Don Vincente met Alan while he was in a decent mood, not high, but just enough to remain calm. Alan felt nervous around him. He seemed very powerful. "Diego speaks well of you. I have some business interests in the area, and he thought you could assist me if needed," said Don Vincente. Alan sensed an opportunity. "Diego is too generous. I help when I can and would be happy to assist a friend of his." "Thank you. I'm facing a small problem on the East Coast, and am looking for options here in the West. Your neighbors can be difficult and stubborn at times." "I understand that, Don Vincente. I had a tough situation with a difficult person from the South last year, which is part of why I moved here. I promised myself I would make him regret our encounter if I ever got the chance." Don Vincente seemed relaxed and enough at ease to share more than usual. "Ah, yes, never forget those who cross you. After this issue is dealt with, I have a certain couple who will regret hearing my name." Alan nearly spilled his drink. Are you referring to Hardy and Gwen Wilkes? Yes. You know them? Yes, I do. They have caused me quite a bit of trouble lately. Don Vincente chuckled. Well then, have you heard the saying, the enemy of my enemy is my friend? I think you could be useful to me. Let me share my troubles. Maybe you could help more than I expected. He shared some of his history with the Wilkes family. I've tried many ways to solve this, but nothing seems to work. Every time I think I'm making progress, something prevents it. What would it mean to you if I could help fix this? You would have my deep gratitude plus a generous reward. Your dreams of retiring early could be a reality if you succeed. Consider it done. I will head to the East Coast tomorrow. Let me know if there's anything else I can help with, he said. There was something else he could do. Unbeknownst to Alan, his car was filled with illegal substances, a little extra task. Don Vincente enjoyed managing multiple things at once. He handed Alan $10,000 to use for gas stations and small diners, telling him to pay in cash to stay off the radar. It would seem like he never left the state. The individual meetings went quite well. Hardy already knew this, but Gwen quickly learned that avoiding the truth would not be accepted. Bill insisted on honesty and wouldn't stop until he got it. After each meeting, he organized his notes and waited for the big reveal. Gwen arrived 15 minutes early, promising herself not to be late after the first meeting. Hardy was already there. Great, let's start a bit early since you're both here. Here's the plan. I will talk for a while and then each of you will have a chance to speak. I must warn you, stay on topic or we will end the session without credit. Do you understand? I need a yes or no from each of you. Hardy. I understand, Bill. Can we begin now? Not just yet. Gwen, do you get it? Yes, Bill, I will follow the rules. Good. That's what I want to hear. For now, I'll be the only one speaking. I want to discuss some of the things from your individual sessions and begin my therapy plan. He paused, looking at them. They were sitting in chairs placed far apart. Gwen started to move hers closer, but Bill stopped her. Please leave the chairs as they are. There's a reason for that. First, you both come from very different backgrounds. Next, there's quite an age difference. Your values, at least during your marriage, were also quite different. In fact, you are nearly opposite in every way but two. One, for reasons we might not understand, you care for each other. Now, Hardy, don't react strongly. I'm not saying you have to stay together, just noting what you both have said. The second, and most important, is that you don't truly know each other. You've never actually met. You both entered a marriage built on misunderstandings. We are going to change that. The rest of this session, and maybe one or two more, will be about you introducing yourselves. Think of it as a first date. You must be interested or you wouldn't have agreed to this meet. So let's start with physical introductions. Hardy, please stand up, walk over to Gwen, shake her hand, and introduce yourself. Don't hold back. He looked nervous, almost like he was facing something very daunting. Bill encouraged him. Go on, Hardy, speak up, the lady is waiting. Gwen had stood up. Hardy stopped in front of her, keeping some distance. Hello, my name is Hardy Wilkes. How are you this evening? The question was asked in a flat tone, but it was clear and straightforward. I'm happy to meet you, Mr. Wilkes. I'm Gwen Canaday. I feel better tonight than I have in a long time. Thank you for asking. She reached out her hand. Don't be rude, Hardy. Shake her hand. It won't hurt you. Bill was smiling, even though they couldn't see him. He had never seen Hardy so hesitant, reaching out his hand like he expected something bad to happen. Gwen took his hand gently, holding it for a moment. Good, good. Now please sit down. Would you like to ask her some questions and get to know her a bit more? I'm sure she's interesting. Remember, no questions about past relationships for a first date. Hardy was trying to think of a question when Gwen spoke up. Maybe I should start. As I said, my name is Gwen. I'm a lawyer, and right now I'm an assistant district attorney in Jefferson County. I grew up in Boston. Did you notice my accent? It's not as strong now as when I first moved here, but people still notice it. I'm 27 years old. I was homeschooled during my teenage years and started college just after my 16th birthday. I didn't take breaks between semesters and got my law license at 22. I work for my dad, who is the main owner of a law firm you might know called Canaday and Associates. He's been a lawyer for 5 generations, so it runs in our family. She paused to catch her breath, worried she might have shared too much. Good, Gwen, good. Now, Hardy, would you like to tell Gwen about where you grew up? Maybe share what you think about what you've heard? He took a deep breath as if he was choosing his words carefully. I've heard of Canaday and Associates. They have an office here, too. They're a good firm and very respected. I know Greg Canaday personally, and he's a fine man, someone to be proud of. I've heard some things about his daughter, but you can't trust everything you hear. Bill looked ready to say something, but Hardy continued, noticing Gwen's slight reaction to the last comment. As for me, I grew up in tough circumstances. My mother had her issues, and my sister followed similar paths. My dad was involved in some trouble, and I ended up in a similar situation. Luckily, some friends helped me join the military. I served 2 tours in Iraq and was eventually let go from the army. I faced some challenges but received therapy. And eventually I became a lawyer. I have a lot of family around here. Some are good people, while others aren't as respectable. I guess I'm somewhere in between. No one really knows what to expect from me. I'm sure you'll find your way. Good people usually do. Despite where you came from, you've done well through hard work and determination. I admire that. By the way, I noticed your arm is hurt. Are you okay? Gwen couldn't hide her concern. Hardy laughed softly. I'll be fine soon. Just a farming accident. It's important to stay focused when using equipment that can be dangerous. Did you break anything? She smiled. I did chip some paint and a few parts were damaged, but they've been fixed and seem to be doing fine now. Bill jumped in to keep the conversation moving. That's interesting, but let's get back to the topic. I have some questions. Gwen, let's start with an easy one. Where do you see yourself in 10 years? What kind of job do you want, and what's your idea of a relationship? Where do you think you'll live? That's an easy one, Bill. I see myself in a caring relationship, happily married to my dream partner with maybe 1 or 2 kids. I plan to stay in this area since my family and friends are here. As for a career, I'm not sure. We might not need to work, so I might be a stay-at-home parent until the kids are older. I picture my husband as a farmer, as long as he avoids complicated machines. She couldn't help but smile a little. And you, Hardy? What do you think about that plan? I have to say that's not what I picture. You seem too focused on your goals, maybe a bit too self-centered to have a family. Before Bill could say anything, Gwen responded. That might have been true a year ago, but my priorities have shifted. My family has become very important to me. I found that when I focus on making others happy, I worry less about unimportant things. I love my job as a lawyer, whether in court or in meetings, but I've realized it doesn't provide the comfort or closeness that people need. Having someone to care for you is so much more meaningful. Bill observed the changes in Hardy's expressions, going from sad to frustrated to doubtful. He decided it was time to ask something else. Hardy, where do you see yourself in 10 years? Hardy sighed. Given how things are going, I might not be around in 10 years. If I am, I hope to still be practicing law, and maybe I'll have people who care about me. There's a slight chance that I might even have a partner or a child or 2 if it's not too late. Who knows? Bill glanced at the clock. All right, we'll wrap it up for today. I want you to think about something before our next meeting. Take it seriously. Writing it down might help you organize your thoughts. Here's what I want from you. Define love, not just in general terms, but in your own words. I want to compare your thoughts separately first, and then I'd like you both to share your definitions with each other next time, explaining if necessary. See you next week. Gwen lingered as Hardy left. Do I have a chance with him? Bill gave an answer that didn't really answer the question. It's not my place to decide that. Good night, Gwen. Alan was feeling irritable after 2 long days on the road. A speeding ticket in Texas for going 15 miles over the limit. That ruined his plan to stay under the radar. He talked the officer down to 10 over the limit so he wouldn't have to go to court, promising to pay the fine before it reached that point. There was a great party in Phoenix. He had a good time enjoying the company and the excitement, and he wished it would never end. 2 hours from Birmingham, he called Gwen. Don Vincente had kindly given him her new number. Gwen, hey, what's up? Miss me? She recognized his voice but pretended not to. Who is this? It's Alan. Ready for some fun like before? I don't care how you got my number, just lose it and never call me again. I hope things go badly for you. She hung up quickly. He called her back right away. Wait, before you hang up, I need to tell you something. I have some photos of you that could cause trouble. We should talk. She sighed. This was just what she needed. Another person trying to cause chaos in her life. Just get to the point, Alan. What do you want? As much as I'd love to revisit our last meeting, this is about business. Because of you, your dad, and your husband, my life is messy. But I've made new connections and started fresh. Meet me somewhere to discuss it. She agreed to meet him at a truck stop outside of town. As soon as she hung up, she called the judge. I can't let Hardy know he's here. He would be really angry. If he finds out Alan came to see me, he'll misunderstand everything and won't want me back. What should I do? JT might have a weak body, but he was still very clever. Call him back and change the meeting place to the address I'm giving you. Tell him whatever he needs to hear to get him there. After ending that call, he reached out to his son-in-law. Will, you're about to face a serious issue. He filled him in, and they quickly made plans. Hardy was just leaving the courthouse when a deputy, his cousin Ebb, stopped him. Hardy, I need you to come with me. Don't be upset, but let me put handcuffs on you for now. It will look like I'm arresting you. I'll explain everything later, but Will said it was important. He wasn't happy about being cuffed, but he trusted Will. As twilight fell and shadows grew longer, they drove into the sun, making it hard to see where they were going when they stopped. They arrived at an old abandoned farmhouse, overgrown with weeds and showing years of decay. 3 cars were already there, Will's, Gwen's, and a red Corvette he didn't recognize. A strange feeling grew in his gut. Adrenaline rushed through him. He had stopped taking his medication until things settled down with the Escobar situation. He felt he needed a clearer head. Ebb turned the car slightly, and then Hardy saw Alan. He spoke in a very soft voice that still made the deputy uneasy. Ebb, I need you to take these handcuffs off me and let me out of the car. Hardy, Will said to keep you here. He'll be here soon to explain things. JT is with him, and they will make sure nothing happens to Gwen. Just try to stay calm. I need out right now, Ebb. Please do it. Will approached. Hardy, you need to relax. Gwen called us and said this guy was threatening her. She feared you would misunderstand. He and I will have a little chat, and then I'll ask him to leave our state for good. It will be over soon, and we can all go home. Alan felt scared. Sheriff Andy and the deputy did not seem friendly, and he didn't know who the older man was, but he looked very angry. He regretted agreeing to such a meeting. He thought he could show her the photos, make her do something to mess up the Escobar trial, and maybe get something in return. Then the police arrived, and everything went downhill quickly. He wouldn't admit it, but each time he looked at Hardy, he felt uneasy, remembering the pain he had felt before. He was also feeling a bit high, having used something before meeting Gwen for confidence. There was still quite a bit in the car, and he would be in trouble if they looked. The sheriff came over, staring at him until he felt uncomfortable. He flinched a bit when the sheriff began to speak. Mr. Hovis, I'm hearing troubling things about you. Coming into my county and threatening one of our locals doesn't sit well with me. Do you know what could happen for attempted blackmail in our state? The inmates in Huntsville wouldn't be kind to you. Some of them might even find you appealing. Suddenly, his plan seemed foolish, and he searched for a way out. He felt just confident enough to try to bluster and make threats. Hold on a minute. I was only stopping by to see an old friend, maybe share some memories. I don't know what she told you, but unless you can prove I've done something wrong, I think I'll be on my way. That man, he said, pointing at Hardy, has already been aggressive with me. Fortunately for him, I was in no shape to defend myself earlier. Otherwise, it would have ended differently. You wouldn't stand a chance against me in a fair fight. It was a good thing he was restrained. He would have loved to show Hardy up in front of his partner. He felt frustrated and kicked the car door as hard as he could. Seeing how strong it was, he tried to kick the window instead. After several attempts, he managed to break it. He tried to make his way through, but Ebb and Will were pushing him back. He was red in the face and nearly shouting. T used a strong voice that showed his many years in court. He struck the hood of the car with his cane and called out, "Enough! Hardy, stop right now! You, boy from the north, quiet down! If you make another sound, I'll ask them to let him go. I'll stand up for him myself. He shouldn't spend 3 years in a mental institution because I've got witnesses to say he wasn't in his right mind back then. You'll be gone, and no one will question it. Now, if you want to stay alive, I suggest you listen to our sheriff." Mr. Hovis, if I had the choice, I would arrest you right now. But I won't, to keep things from getting difficult for some good people. You get one chance. They could get hurt, but you'd still go to jail. Get into that nice car and leave my county. Don't come back. This is your only chance. Grab it before I change my mind. He felt a little hazy, but he knew it was time to get away. Don Vincente wouldn't be happy, but he could find a way to make it right. They asked him to empty his pockets, and while doing so, he realized his phone was gone. It had the important pictures he needed. "Where's my phone?" Gwen smiled sweetly. "I'm sorry, Alan, but I think it fell off your car and I stepped on it. My mistake. Just send me the bill for a new one. Now go and have a bad life." She had crushed the phone completely. He wanted to try to recover it, but the sheriff said to leave it. Hardy was still struggling, and the dog in the deputy's car was barking loudly. He hurried away as quickly as he could. After about 10 minutes, Hardy calmed down. The dog was still barking. "What's wrong with Belle? She's been acting wild since you got here." Ebb smiled at his boss. "I bet there were drugs in that car. A lot, judging by her behavior." "Interesting," said Will Robb, taking out his phone. "Coy, how are you? Feeling good about the election? That state trooper really wants to be sheriff, and he has some powerful people backing him. Tell me, are you still running that tough-on-crime campaign? Still interested in Northerners, lawyers, and drug dealers? I think I might just have something for you. I have a tip that could help you appear stronger to voters. In about 30 minutes, a big blonde man in a shiny red car will be driving through your county at 65, heading north. I heard he might be carrying drugs, but I couldn't act on it in time. Yeah, I've been receiving tips non-stop. Someone really wants to catch those troublemakers, and I'm the one benefiting from it. I was planning to retire next year, but if things keep going like this, the voters will be very angry if I try. Coy, listen, you didn't hear this from me. I don't want my source getting upset. They might have more information. You're welcome. Say hi to Myra. Bye for now." He hung up the phone with a big smile on his face. "Well, everyone, I've done my duty for today. Time to head home. Dinner is waiting. Hardy, you are going to pay for those broken windows, and you're welcome. Good night, Miss Gwen. See you in court." Gwen was trying to explain things to Hardy, but he stayed silent. After a deep sigh, she gave up and walked away. An hour later, Alan was still angry about his failure. He stopped at a rest area and did some quick breathing exercises to calm himself. It helped a bit. Suddenly, flashing blue lights appeared behind him. Great, not again. First in Texas, now here. He looked down and realized he was speeding at 95 miles per hour. Pulling over, he was about to put on a sad face when another police car blocked him in from the front and another parked next to him. 2 deputies and a state officer pulled out their weapons and ordered him out of the car onto the ground. 10 minutes later, he was handcuffed in the back of one of the police cars when the sheriff and 2 DEA vans arrived, followed by 2 news crews. It seemed they really were serious about speeding. One of the DEA vans had 2 dogs eager to check his car. He felt a wave of worry. It was all over the news the next morning. The announcer could barely contain their excitement. A traffic stop last night led to surprising results. Alan Hovis, a lawyer from California, was pulled over for driving 25 miles per hour over the speed limit. A routine check revealed drugs in the vehicle. The car was taken to the DEA lab in Montgomery, where it was taken apart and found to contain 9 pounds of cocaine in several hidden spots. There are rumors that the lawyer is linked to a Mexican drug cartel, highlighting the increasing drug flow from the south. They kept Alan in a separate area, citing security concerns since cartels may have connections to dangerous groups. He realized he was in a lot of trouble. He quickly agreed to help after being promised protection. The DEA agents assured him he was safe, but they knew from experience that if the cartel wanted someone, there was little hope of survival. Their goal was to keep him alive long enough to testify. Don Vicente was furious. He was aware of the weak nature of the California lawyer. He would definitely speak out. It might be wise to go home for a while. Truthfully, he didn't have much fondness for his nephew, but he had promised his late sister he would protect him. Plus, it had become a matter of pride. If he lost this, his power would be at risk. He was feeling desperate when luck brought him a surprise. A man who might be helpful reached out to one of his team members. After checking him out, they found him interesting. They decided to meet. He did not like Ronnie Wilkes at all. A man who betrays his family cannot be trusted. Still, Ronnie had a plan that could work. Look, you know you can't reach his wife. She is protected by strong security. But the person he cares about most, his grandfather, has a regular routine. Every 2 weeks, he and Aunt Hildy go to the town. She shops for groceries and gets her hair done while Hardy gets a haircut and buys supplies before they meet for lunch at the diner. Hardy's at Tommy's barber shop by 10 every time. He'll bring 2 friends. One stays outside while the other goes in. That's our chance. I'll go in with a story to hurry him out the back door. We'll have him in the car before he knows what's happening. He won't see it coming. I'm family, and I'm supposed to help keep an eye on them. What do you want? Ronnie suddenly looked uneasy. I need some money for my guys, enough to leave town and start fresh. And I'd like to work for you. I know I could be helpful. Don Vincente nodded. He agreed to everything, even though he knew he could not trust a traitor. He was correct. When this all began, Hardy visited Roy. Roy, you probably know trouble is ahead. Your business will be affected, and I can't change that. When the law steps in, they will look at everyone. Before things get worse, tell me what your crew makes each month. Don't try to trick me. The number was much lower than Hardy expected. All right, here's the plan. I'll pay you that amount plus 10% to lay low for 2 or 3 months. I'll also need some of your guys to keep watch on a few people. I will pay extra for that. Can we agree? They managed to come to an agreement. All activities besides bookmaking would pause. Hardy had commitments with some people from New Orleans that he could not ignore. He surprised Hardy with his response. I would have done this for free. Family is important. Hardy appreciated it. Thanks, Cousin Roy. But my actions might hurt your business, and I can't carry that weight even for family. They shook hands. Will Robb dropped by his office. Do you have a moment? Hardy pointed to a chair and asked Crystal to make some coffee. What's going on, Will? First, Bonnie is in town for a few days and wants to see you. Bonnie was his daughter, a couple of years younger than Hardy. Hardy smiled. How is the distinguished state senator? Tell her to choose the time and place. I'll let her share what's happening in her life. I'm sure she'll call. He sat quietly for a moment. Come on, Will. Just say it before it makes you feel sick. I understand what is going on. I think I know who is giving me those hotline tips. I'm still unsure where the information is coming from, but as long as it keeps coming, I'm not worried. When the criminals go quiet, it makes me uneasy. Thank goodness for the workers on the street. At least they give the guys something to do. I can feel something bad is coming. I need your promise that you will use whatever power you have to keep innocent people safe. Keep your troubles to yourself, and I won't have to ask any awkward questions. Do you understand? Hardy smiled. Will Robb, I have no clue what you mean. But if it were a situation like that, I would do everything I could to make sure it happens. Are you satisfied? As satisfied as I can be, I guess. I like you, Hardy, but every time you show up, my life gets more difficult. I'll tell Bonnie to call. Thanks for the coffee. Everything went smoothly. Ronnie rushed into the barber shop just as Joshua got out of the chair. Joshua, we need to get you out of here now. I have a car waiting out back. They're watching the front. Roy found out they planned to take you. Let's go. He led him through the back of the shop with the young cousin following close behind. Quick, turn around. The young man turned and Ronnie struck him, knocking him out immediately. Joshua started to struggle, but a quick tap got him to calm down. Hardy received an email with pictures in about 45 minutes. Joshua was tied to a chair with a noticeable bump on his forehead. The message was brief. She drops the trial or he faces the worst. Reply by 10 tomorrow. Hardy felt anger building inside him, welcoming it. It was a long night. His first task was to get Gwen out of town without her knowing they had Joshua. 4 cars left town and no one knew which one she was in. Outside of town, they picked up 4 more vehicles, splitting into pairs with the first 4 and going in different directions. The next morning at 9, Don Vincente received a response. There was a picture of Raul, looking badly hurt. The message was simple and clear. Call this cell before 11, or Raul will not survive past noon. No one can protect him. Don Vincente checked the prison. There had almost been a riot, but strangely, Raul was the only one significantly hurt. Security was tight, and rumors suggested someone might not make it past noon. At 10:30, he made the call. There will be a man in a black truck in the parking lot of the Piggly Wiggly on 9th. Follow him and bring as many people as you want, as long as one of them is my grandfather. Arrive no later than 4. Raoul will stay safe until 6 unless I get what I want. I will send more pictures at 2 to encourage you." He hung up. Don Vincente found it unsettling. No negotiation was offered, no threats were made, and no discussions were held. He felt uneasy when he received the next images. His wife and twin daughters were having fun at their home in Cozumel. The timestamp showed it was just 45 minutes ago. 5 large SUVs followed the truck as they left town. They traveled down a narrow road until the truck stopped at a gate. The driver opened the gate and waved them through. After locking it, he turned and walked away. A well-kept path led through fields and trees to a small pond. 2 oak trees stood by the pond, providing shade over picnic tables. The area around it was clear for a good distance, with fields of newly planted grain all around. Hardy was sitting under the trees with a fishing rod and cooler beside him. He held a drink in his hand and placed the bottle on the table. 18 men stepped out of the vehicles, 16 of them armed with various weapons. Don Vincente stepped forward, struggling to control his anger. Hardy spoke before Vincente could become too upset. "Please sign this and give me $100. The document was a contract for Hardy to help with his nephew's defense. "This gives us protection. I can't share any information from our meeting. I'm sure you understand the benefit." A $100 bill was handed over and the contract was signed. Vincente lost his temper. "You think you're clever? How dare you threaten my family? I will enjoy watching you suffer." Hardy listened until Vincente finished. Then he casually said, "Beer bottle." It shattered into many pieces without a sound. He looked at the surprised faces around him and smiled. Suppressors are amazing, aren't they? And these earphones have impressive range. Check your chests. Vincente looked down to see 3 red dots on his chest. He glanced around. "They're in the trees." "That's over 400 yards, he shouted. Hardy smiled. "Yes, 3 of them are former soldiers trained as snipers. One holds a record for a long-distance shot, almost 900 yards. The others are just skilled hunters. You can't see them, but there are 3 more much closer. Don't worry. All I want is to talk. I just needed your attention. Tell your men to stay calm. No one has to get hurt today. How about we sit down in the shade and enjoy a drink? But first, send your grandfather across the field. You don't need him anymore. You have me now. I promise, unless you start something, there will be no violence today." Vincente spoke in Spanish. One of his men opened a door and Joshua and Ronnie got out. "Damn, Ronnie, they got you too? Well, help him across the field." Hardy had heard his grandfather curse before, but never quite like this. "He's part of this plan. He's the one who got me into this situation. He's the worst kind of traitor. You don't expect this from family?" "Is that true, Ronnie?" it was said softly. But when Ronnie looked into his eyes, he felt a chill. "Well, not exactly, Joshua exploded in anger. "Yes, exactly. Ask Vincente." He pointed at Vincente, who nodded in agreement. "You know how it goes. Use any means to get the job done." Hardy studied Ronnie closely. "When this is over, we will have a talk." Ronnie felt uneasy, like a warning was hanging in the air. "Enough of this family talk. Don Vincente, if you would." They moved to the picnic table and watched Joshua disappear into the trees. Hardy opened a laptop. "Look at this." It was a video of his villa, showing his family on the beach, searching for something and laughing together. A large boat cruised through the waves, shooting colorful fireworks. There were packages on the deck. When the boat reached the shore, the guards pulled it in, smiling. The women and 2 children eagerly opened the packages. Ronnie felt a wave of dread wash over him. "Calm down, Mr. Escobar. You just surprised your family with a lovely gift. They knew it was coming, but not the details. There's a note in your wife's gift explaining how sorry you are for being away from home so much. Look at the girls. Aren't they adorable? They received beautiful lockets and brand new smartphones so you can call them good night no matter where you are. Your wife got the same phone and a lovely necklace, which you said was just a small token for her being your everything. You'll get a warm welcome when you return home. By the way, the note is in your handwriting using the special name you call her. Here's a phone for you, and don't worry, it's clean. She should be calling any second." The phone rang just as he finished speaking. He picked it up carefully and put it to his ear. It was his wife, crying and telling him how wonderful he was, how much she loved him. and asking when he would come home. She mentioned a special surprise waiting for him. After hanging up, his children called, one after the other. Hardy smiled. Family is wonderful, isn't it? I couldn't do without mine. Now let's get down to business. Those gifts could have been dangerous. I don't have your money, but I have some. Part of it is locked in a fund that I can only access with 2 trusted people. If I or my family is harmed, your family will pay the price. You may survive, but you'll carry the weight of it for a long time. Vincente searched his eyes. You're a monster, Hardy replied coolly. We're both monsters, Mr. Escobar. What we can do is more than most people realize, but we can handle it and still rest easy. If this keeps going, innocent people will suffer on both sides. We need to stop this now. What do you suggest? Let the kid take a deal. He's just a kid and he thinks he's above everyone because of you. This morning should have shown him otherwise. He's only 20. He could be free in 8 years. Maybe this will help him grow up. He might face challenges, but you'll make sure he's safe. This conflict has already cost you a lot. It could get worse. Your lawyer from California is probably talking to everyone. Have you heard from Diego in San Diego lately? You won't. It's time to step back, fix your relationships, and save your business before it's too late. Give me your word, and I'll make this easier for you. Or at least, my part of it. Vincente was surprised by the depth of what he had learned. He made a decision. If I give you my word, would you trust it? Yes, in my experience, your word means something to you. Let's shake on it. He held out his hand, and Don Vincente Escobar, a man feared by many, accepted it. He recognized there was no intimidation here, and he would keep his promise. Standing up, he told Hardy to have Gwen prepare the agreement. He would ensure it was finalized. They walked back to the cars. Ronnie stood in disbelief as they packed up. No, he shouted. He's supposed to be gone. He raised his shotgun, but it was quickly knocked from his grasp by a man with a cane. The man had a leg in a cast and an arm in a sling. Hardy expressed his gratitude. As the man lifted his shirt, the others saw a new scar, as well as older scars from past events. Their eyes widened in surprise. Tell him he's a bad man, and he almost got me. Another relayed the message, and the man smiled. They shook hands. Vincente addressed Ronnie. Do you want him now? Not now. There are too many witnesses. Ronnie, get out of here. If you stay, I'll make it very hard for you. Do you understand? He nodded and climbed into a vehicle. One last piece of advice. Leave right away. Don't go back home. Authorities are closing in. Don't use your jet. They are watching it. Make different travel plans now. Goodbye, and I hope to never see you again. Vincente thanked him and drove south, knowing Hardy would not see him again. As Vincente looked back while they drove away, he saw men in camouflage rising from the fields and what seemed to be a line of people emerging from the woods. He felt relieved that no one acted rashly. He dropped Ronnie off at the town's edge and watched as he crawled away. Gwen was surprised when the Escobar lawyers asked to meet with her. She was even more surprised when they agreed to a deal. He received a long sentence but could be free in as little as 7 years. All the tension and drama seemed to vanish. Somehow she felt Hardy was behind it. Her year was up. Paul and Karen were pleading for her to stay. Paul even hinted that she would make a great district attorney when he retired in 2 years. She felt worn out. The past 20 months had been, at the very least, interesting. She had been exposed to a completely different world and mostly enjoyed it a lot. She promised Paul she would think about it, but decided to take some time off to refresh herself. The counseling had its ups and downs. She didn't realize at first, but the chairs had slowly moved closer together. One day they were gone and replaced by a large sofa. They were closer than they had been in a while, even if it was still a bit awkward. The next time, the sofa turned into a small love seat. She often wondered about his life. She made good use of the internet, finding ways to keep things interesting for herself. A few sessions ago, she brought it up, with Bill's support. He was curious too. She had mentioned her plans when he asked if she was seeing other men. Until I'm divorced, I won't be with anyone else, I promised myself. She carefully brought the topic up with Hardy, telling him she had no plans to stray again. To her surprise, he laughed. You love having fun, Gwen. Do you really think I believe you are doing without it? He laughed even harder when she told him about her little secrets. Finally, she angrily declared that she could go as long as he could. That sparked another round of laughter. You've already lasted almost a year longer than I have. In my mind, you broke our trust when you cheated. I've had someone special for the last 10 months. I waited for a while, but then I thought, why not? It didn't seem to matter if I did too. Before you guess, it's not Crystal. You don't know her, and she doesn't live here. We're not in love, but we enjoy each other's company. She's smart and definitely fun. Gwen felt stunned. Hardy was with someone else. How could he? She snapped. You need to stop this right now. I'm happy to give you all the attention you want. Just ask. The sooner you do, the better. Sorry, Gwen. You can stomp your foot all you want. Maybe I've already moved on. I might still be having fun, but you'll never know, will you? How does it feel to wonder about it? Welcome to my world for the last few months of our marriage. It was too much for Gwen. She hurried out of the office. When she didn't return in 5 minutes, Bill went looking for her. Her car was gone. She's left. You really hurt her, you know. I'll apologize when I see her next, but not for what I did. She broke our marriage, not me. You're not planning to fix things, are you? I don't see that happening. Yes, she's grown up. Yes, she's more mature. Yes, I still care for her. But really, Bill, how much has she changed? It's been almost 2 years and she won't let go. When it comes to our marriage, she keeps saying, I want. She should understand by now that I can't forgive her, not for what happened, but for how she treated me. Bill sighed. He thought many times they might work things out. Okay then, this next session will be the last, but promise me you'll share with her what you told me, kindly. Are you still in touch with the woman? No. She ended things suddenly. She said she was starting to have feelings for me, but it didn't feel right. Still, it was nice while it lasted. He truly missed her. He was sitting at the bar, enjoying a drink and keeping to himself when she came up to him. Short, with red hair, cute, and fit. The band was on a break, making it easy to chat. Why aren't you dancing? I've seen at least 4 girls ask you and you turned them all down. What's up with that? He smiled. Maybe I can't dance. Maybe I'm not into girls. Maybe I just like my own space. She smiled back, not bothered. I doubt all that. I bet you're a good dancer. I don't get any strange vibes from you, and maybe I want to be part of your space too. She extended her hand. I'm Ann Burnside, captain in the U.S. Army. Hardy Wilkes, sergeant in the U.S. Marines. Sorry about the Army thing, but I bet you're still a nice person. That comment will cost you a dance, soldier. Come on, let's go. The band started playing again. She was right. He was a good dancer, surprising given his height. He was a full foot taller than her, but they moved well together during the slow songs. They laughed, danced, and had drinks. They both took it easy. Others seemed annoyed when he took so much of her time, but no one was brave enough to say anything. As for her, she seemed happy with him. During the last set, he got up. I'm heading to my room now. He walked off without another word. She sat there, stunned. He didn't even say goodnight. She grabbed her purse and headed for the door. He was waiting there. About time. I was starting to think you weren't coming. Let's go. He guided her gently to the elevator. She stood still while he opened the door. He waited for her to step in first, but she just stood there. He took her arm gently. Maybe this was a mistake. Let me get you to your car safely. No, I want to be with you, but you make me nervous. Why? Have I done anything wrong? Made you uncomfortable? Are you afraid of me? Yes. Hardy was taken aback. Why do I scare you? My job has made me a good observer of people. I can usually figure them out quickly. With you, I can't. You seem nice and polite, but there's something inside you that's intense, just beneath the surface. You might be a very bad man. Strangely enough, you're not the first to say that, but I promise I've never harmed anyone who didn't try to hurt me first. Except for one time, I've never harmed a woman. That was an accident, but I understand. Give me a kiss goodnight. I think I've earned that. Then I'll let you enjoy the rest of your evening. She leaned in as he tilted his head, and for a brief moment she understood why someone might be drawn to danger. It was a soft kiss, filled with hints of strength and passion. Forgetting her doubts, she kissed him back, surprised when he welcomed her. She felt his presence grow stronger. In that moment, she felt completely caught up in it. In his room, he was firm but surprisingly gentle. He was clear about what he wanted while never rushing her, and she found comfort in his lead. He removed her clothing slowly, as if he were opening a special gift. He took his time to admire her before moving on to the next part. By the time she was dressed in just her undergarments, she felt ready to burst with anticipation. He took his time, and finally, they were both without their clothes. She admired his strong, toned body and the scars he bore, a reminder of his past. "Have you fought?" she asked softly, tracing a long scar with her fingers. "Not that one. Most of these come from a rough youth." She decided to kiss each scar, wanting to change the memories he carried into something warmer. "From now on, when you see these, think of my kisses. Let's create new, happier memories," she playfully teased him. "Maybe I should check for more." As she moved down, kissing along the way, he felt a mix of surprise and delight. It took everything in him to hold back the urge to rush her as she continued. The sensation was nearly overwhelming, and he tried to pull her back up. "Anne, I'm close." She looked up at him, then went all in, and he lost all control. After it was all over, she cuddled close to him. "Wow, that was amazing! Thank you for that, but why didn't you let me finish?" She smiled widely. "Don't you know the army always completes what it starts? I must say, I didn't expect such a response from you. How long has it been since you were with someone?" "Almost a year." She was surprised. "A year? That sounds like a story I want to hear. Did something happen to you, or were you just busy? Tell me about it later." As they were close, she felt a rush of pleasure. "I can wait." She thought about how good he was at pleasing her. They shared many moments of intimacy. When they finally were together, she felt free to let go. He was tender at first, then more demanding. Ultimately, she decided to give him everything. They enjoyed each other and rested. A little while later, he found ways to please her again. A few hours later, she teased him, mentioning he hadn't tried everything. She was glad to have some supplies ready. It was surprising how something that started out uncomfortable could feel wonderful in the end. She woke up feeling sore but happy. He was quick to take care of his need, noting that he wanted to recover. They spent most of the weekend together, only leaving the room when necessary. During their time together, he opened up about his marriage. "The girl sounds a bit spoiled, but she seems to be changing. Are you thinking about going back to her?" He looked at her in a way that made her want to help him feel better. "I don't think so. I still care for her, but I just can't get past it. Maybe I'm too set in my ways. I want to see you again, but think about it. Maybe she has grown. Give her a chance if you can." He responded with a nod, then returned to being close to her. They planned to meet again in 2 weeks. She started counting down the days. They quickly became a couple. The nights he didn't stay were hard for her, but he always made time to take her out for dinner or dancing, and sometimes they would steal moments alone. Weekends were the best. They didn't stay in all the time. They explored, visited places in Florida, went to Amelia Island and Jacksonville. They read about a local district attorney and his challenges with a crime group. He seemed like a character right out of a story, often seen with a beautiful partner. Hardy looked at the latest news and made a comment about understanding the situation. Their talk shifted as they relaxed together, snuggling in bed. She noticed him move away slightly as he propped himself up on his arms. She opened her eyes and saw him looking at her with a look she had never seen before. "Anne, in all the time we've been together, have I ever asked you about your work or asked for a favor?" "No, we don't often talk about our jobs. I thought you were in construction, so I was surprised to learn you're a lawyer. What's going on?" "I need to find a man with special skills. A man who can be tough but stays loyal to the job. He needs to know Mexico well and be okay with working there. Can you help me?" She sat up against the headboard. "Are you looking for someone who hurts people?" "Yes and no. I don't want anyone harmed, but I need him ready to do what it takes to reach my goal. I want the people I'm dealing with to know he can be serious if needed." "What kind of trouble are you in?" "No, don't tell me. I'm guessing your wife is involved." "Wait, I changed my mind. Tell me a bit more and I might help." He explained the situation his wife was in and how he planned to help her. "You may not get this, Anne, but until the divorce is final, the family sees her as belonging to me. I can't let anything happen to her. They might take matters into their own hands and I won't be able to stop them. It could end badly. Innocent people who don't even know what's happening, could get hurt. I don't want that on my mind." Can you help me? If not, I'll head to Mexico and find someone myself. Can you give me a few days? I could get in trouble helping you. Sure, if you have any doubts, don't feel like you have to help. He gave her a quick kiss and hopped in the shower. She sat on the bed, amazed again as he walked past her. She knew she would at least try to help and hoped she wouldn't get him into more trouble. She was smart. You don't work in military intelligence without being sharp. After their first meeting, she checked into Hardy. The details made her worried, as it was hard to match the man she read about to the cheerful guy she shared her life with. But she trusted her instincts, and her first thoughts about him had been mostly right. Deciding to take a chance, she quietly reached out to some contacts, saying it was just for research. That excuse got her called into her commanding officer's office. Not wanting to lie, she told him everything. He frowned, made a call, and soon she was in Major Stein's office. She repeated her story. He sat, rocking slightly in his chair as he considered the situation. Then he straightened up, looking serious. Hypothetically, could you find someone who matches his needs? Of course, sir. I already have. He looked at her sharply. Your relationship with Mr. Wilkes, what does that mean? We have a casual relationship. I only see him when he comes to town, and I've never been to his home or met his family. We care for each other, but we both know it's not serious. He's going through a divorce, and I'm committed to the Army for at least 8 more years. Do you know why he needs this man? Not really. I think it has to do with keeping his soon-to-be ex safe from some trouble. He leaned back, fingers steepled. Go ahead. She almost missed what he said. I'm sorry, could you say that again? Go ahead. Connect him with your contact, and keep an eye on Mr. Wilkes. If he seems like he might do something risky, let your commander know. Anne looked worried. I don't know if I can watch him. He interrupted her. Don't be silly. You knew when you reached out that it would come back to your boss. You're too smart to be careless. You wanted us to look into it so we could find out more. You'll be able to keep track of him, and this gives you a way to do that through proper channels. We just need useful information, not every detail. Now off you go. You've got your instructions. He sat back, lost in thought. Hardy, what are you up to? Maybe Bill knows something. And so, the situation known as Wilkes War was closely followed by the Army. It led to valuable information on a major cartel, especially concerning North American connections. Some tips even came directly from them, which really helped various agencies. Hardy never realized this, and Anne ensured that the watchers remained discreet. Then, by chance, while Hardy was in Mexico meeting someone she had set up, Anne found herself unexpectedly sharing drinks with his wife in a hotel room. Anne didn't think it was just coincidence. She decided this was a sign to end things with Hardy. She did so the next weekend, being straightforward as always. She sensed he might suspect something was wrong, but he tried to make their final time together special. As she watched the plane disappear into the sky, tears filled her eyes as she wondered about what could have been. Her last meeting with Bill was very intense. Gwen tried to stay positive, but Bill stopped her. Gwen, Hardy has some things to share. Please listen and try not to interrupt. Can you do that? She nodded, feeling nervous. Hardy moved a chair closer to her and gently held her hand. When I was in Iraq for the second time, I had to meet and work with a local tribal leader. My interpreter and I stumbled upon a lecture for 3 couples getting ready to marry. The speaker was taking his time, making sure everyone could understand. We had to wait, so my interpreter told me what he was explaining. I remember those words even now. My children, marriage is a special place, held up by 3 strong pillars: love, trust, and respect. If any of these pillars fall, the whole structure becomes unstable. If 2 fall, it all comes crashing down. Love is the strongest pillar, supported by respect and trust. If either of those weakens, love cannot stand. Do you understand, Gwen? I still care deeply for you, but you have damaged our relationship. You've lost my trust because of your actions. I believe you when you say you see your mistakes and that you've grown. However, knowing this, you should understand that our marriage is over. You still act like a child asking for what they want. I'm sorry, but it won't work this time. I won't be returning for counseling. Bill knows this is final. I'm leaving the papers here. If you truly are the person you say you've become, please sign them. He leaned over and kissed her cheek before standing up. Goodbye, Gwen. She sat there so stunned she couldn't even cry. He was really gone. She turned to Bill. "Is it really over?" "I'm afraid it is. For what it's worth, I thought there were times you both might make it." "But why?" "I've changed, become a better person. Didn't he see that?" "Yes, he did. He once told me how proud he was of your growth and how you embraced your family here." "Then why?" Bill took a deep breath. What he was about to say would hurt, but it might help her to understand and find some peace. "First, let me say he still loves you. He was sincere when he told you that. But Gwen, look at it from his perspective. You were everything to him. You were proof that he had overcome his past, that he was a good person deserving of happiness. When you chose to be with him, it meant a lot to him. Then when you started to pull away, feeling embarrassed to be with him, his world began to crumble. When you were unfaithful, it hurt him deeply. He shared with me that he felt like he was proving he had overcome his past, but your actions shattered that belief. In an instant, the happy life he worked hard to build felt like it was gone. In his past, trust was crucial. He needed to have people around him he could really count on. A broken trust could lead to serious problems, so he learned to be careful about who he let in, fearing betrayal. You betrayed him in a way that cut him deeply. We talked about this before, but I could never get you to really understand. Sign the papers, Gwen. Give him a chance for peace." Then the tears came. She cried for Hardy, for herself, and for the future she no longer had with him. In the end, she signed the papers and left them with Bill. She did what many young people do when faced with tough times. She ran home to her dad. Greg did his best to comfort her, feeling sad that her dreams of marriage were over. She stayed for 2 weeks, reconnecting with old friends who welcomed her warmly. But now, she wondered if they were truly happy to see her. Not one had reached out during what she felt was her difficult time. They seemed shallow to her now. She couldn't stay in her townhouse. There were too many memories there. So she rented a room in a nice hotel. The more attention she received, the more annoyed she felt. Realizing her true friends were back in Alabama, she told her dad she wanted to take a short vacation before going home. He understood, knowing his hope of her taking over the family business was probably gone. But he was glad she was seeking her own happiness. The idea struck her while moving things from her old purse to a new bag she had bought out of boredom. A card slipped out. Captain Ann Burnside, U.S. Army. She decided to call. To her surprise, Ann answered on the second ring. "Ann, this is Gwen Canaday. Do you remember me?" She could hear the smile in Ann's voice. "I remember beautiful women I've been close with. How are you?" "Divorced, lonely, looking for a change. I need a break and some company from someone outside my past. Can you get some time off? I want to go somewhere warm with sandy beaches and clear water. Please come, it's on me." "What do you mean by company?" "Whatever you want it to be. I'm doing this for me now. I'm not leading you on. Just expect anything and nothing and you'll be fine." "That's an interesting offer. Let me call you back this afternoon. When is best for you?" "I'm free right now, so anytime soon works for me." Anne ended the call. It was tempting. After checking some things, she learned that although the divorce hadn't been filed yet, it was approved. With some available leave time, she decided to go for it. After a few calls, they planned to leave the next Wednesday for 4 days. Gwen didn't want to reveal where they were going, hoping to surprise Anne. Anne asked about the flight and was stunned when Gwen told her it would be on a private jet, sharing the time and runway. "Did I mention I have a trust fund? Don't worry about a thing. This is all on me." Anne was impressed with the jet, but even more with Gwen. She had a new hairstyle, a shorter skirt, and high heels. They shared a friendly kiss. Once settled, Anne asked where they were going. "Oh, just a little resort in the islands I used to visit when I was single." The place was stunning, just what a tropical paradise should be. The suite was impressive, with 2 bedrooms and all the best amenities. "So, what's the plan for today?" Anne asked. Gwen smiled. "Shopping. I need a couple of new swimsuits and we need some fun outfits. We're going to turn heads tonight in the lounge." The resort had several high-end shops, and with money not being an issue, they bought whatever caught their eye. Anne was surprised when they started looking at swimsuits. "Where are the tops?" she asked, puzzled. The salesgirl and Gwen chuckled. This beach is all about being free. Most people go topless, some even skip the swimsuits entirely. But we can find something if you'd like. They picked out a few swimsuits, tiny ones suited for the relaxed beach dress code. Anne laughed, saying she might need a razor for her choice. After shopping for swimsuits and a few elegant dresses, they spent the day at the spa, getting pampered with massages and other treatments. Anne realized there were definite perks to a luxurious lifestyle. Later, when they entered the restaurant, they caught people's attention. The tall blonde and the petite redhead turned heads everywhere. They enjoyed a great meal and promised to work out the next morning to balance it out. That evening, they danced freely, laughing and having a wonderful time. Anne kept an eye on Gwen, who was drinking heavily, ensuring she stayed safe. After a fun night, they returned to the suite together with a few disappointed admirers left behind. Anne helped a tipsy Gwen get to bed, making sure she was comfortable. She gently brushed Gwen's hair back, seeing how the recent heartbreak had affected her. She wondered if this weekend would be the fresh start Gwen needed. "Everything and nothing," she whispered softly, before settling into bed beside Gwen, who naturally leaned into her. At some point before dawn, Gwen got up and then quietly returned. Anne, half asleep, murmured, "Come back to bed, I'm cold." Gwen climbed back into bed and Anne snuggled close. They drifted off peacefully, enjoying the comfort of a weekend away, hoping it was the start of a better chapter. Both women relaxed, enjoying a quiet and tender moment together. They shared a deep, comforting closeness, with Anne gently holding Gwen, and Gwen leaning into her warmth, grateful for the support. After a while, they lay quietly, each lost in thought. Anne gently brushed Gwen's hair back, assuring her, "You don't have to do anything you're unsure about." Gwen looked up, her eyes soft. "I want to, though. You've been so kind to me. It's been a year since anyone has shown me this level of care." They shared a warm embrace, their closeness deepening as they found peace in each other's company. As morning neared, they drifted off to sleep together, finding solace in each other's presence. When Gwen woke, holding Anne, a wave of emotions hit her. She wondered if the night had been a mistake, questioning her feelings. Then she remembered everything she'd been through, and a quiet sadness came over her. Anne, noticing Gwen's tears, held her close, offering quiet words of comfort as Gwen let her feelings out. After a moment, Anne asked gently, "Are you feeling regret?" "No," Gwen said, taking a deep breath. "It's just for the first time. It feels real. It's really over. I didn't expect it to feel this way." Anne held her warmly, saying, "That's natural. You didn't choose to be here alone. It's going to take time, but you'll move forward. You'll find your way and maybe love again." Gwen smiled, though her heart still felt heavy. "Thank you for being here with me. I don't know if I could have gotten through this without you. How about breakfast?" After showering, they ordered breakfast in and enjoyed a relaxed conversation. Anne, still curious, couldn't help but ask, "How did last night make you feel?" Gwen smiled shyly. "Happy. I never thought I'd feel so understood." Anne laughed softly. "There's so much more for you to experience if you're open to it." Gwen chuckled. "I'm not sure I'm ready for all that just yet, but yes, I feel good. How about a day at the beach?" Later, as they set up their spot on the sand, Anne twirled playfully. "How do I look?" Gwen laughed, feeling a bit more at ease. They spent the rest of the day under the sun, enjoying each other's company, letting laughter and warmth fill the spaces where doubt and sadness had been. Before Hardy, she was never insecure and preferred going to nude beaches during vacations. She quickly took off her robe. "Oops, I forgot to put it on. Oh well." "Show off!" Anne laughed, sliding her swimsuit down. It took her a bit to get comfortable, as the tanned bodies around them were quite distracting. Gwen noticed that Anne was blushing. "Now that I'm open to new experiences, it's like looking at a display of beauty. Isn't that blonde girl stunning?" "She is, and so is he and her, and oh my..." Her gaze landed on a well-built man with smooth skin, glowing from the sun. Gwen chuckled. "If you like him, go for it. We're here as friends, remember? Just take care of yourself." Anne squeezed some lotion into her hand. "No, I want to be with you right now. Maybe later we can share some fun. Now, roll over so I can lotion you up." We won't have any fun if you get sunburned." They took turns applying lotion, not missing a spot. A few people glanced their way and they introduced themselves, playfully flirting and promising to dance together later. Gwen tried to relax, but she often thought of Hardy. She wished he could have joined her just once. It would have been nice to show him off, knowing he was hers. For the next 2 days, they ate, sunbathed, danced, and shared special moments together. On their last night, they had a group of friends around them, and she felt at ease. As she paused to sip her drink, she saw Anne dancing closely with the man she'd noticed earlier. Anne leaned over to whisper in his ear, and his bright smile lit up the room. Holding his hand, Anne brought him over. "Last night, let's make some memories." Not making any commitments, Gwen followed them to their room. They were both in their swimsuits when the door opened. Anne led him to the bedroom, playfully teasing along the way. Gwen arrived just in time to see a moment they were sharing. Gwen suddenly thought of Hardy, and it startled her. She gasped and quickly left the room. Anne noticed and followed her. "I'm sorry, Anne, I just can't do this. It would feel like a betrayal, and I can't." Anne reassured her, holding her close. "I understand. But eventually, you'll need to accept the situation. I'll send him back to his room and take care of you." Gwen took her hand. "Don't. I know you've liked him since you saw him. I want to be alone tonight. Go have fun. We'll talk in the morning. Make him remember you forever." Bending down to give her a deep kiss, Anne left with a parting remark. "You're a complex woman, Gwen Cannaday. I hope one day I find someone I can love like you loved him. Good night." As Gwen lay there tossing and turning, listening to the sounds of excitement from the bedroom next door, she thought about what Anne had said. "It's love, Anne, not loved." The flight back to Savannah was quiet for a while, until Gwen started teasing Anne about the night before. "You must have really impressed that poor guy. He practically crawled out the door this morning." Anne smiled at the compliment. "You don't know how true that is. It's a good thing you didn't join us last night. He might have been overwhelmed. I bet he feels sore for a bit." They both laughed before Anne became serious. "What are you going to do now?" "Go back to Birmingham and get back to my life. I'll think about the memories I made this weekend. Thank you, Anne." "I should thank you. This was the best trip I've ever had. The best resort, the best everything. I could get used to this. If you ever want to go on another adventure, keep me in mind. I could be very flexible for the right person." She was joking, but inside she hoped it sparked an idea. She found herself in a strange situation. She had feelings for 2 people who happened to be married. She imagined being partners with both of them. After gathering her thoughts, she asked Gwen for a favor. "If you and Hardy ever get back together, keep our little adventure a secret. Most men aren't comfortable knowing their partner likes both men and women. It's hard enough to keep the guys at bay without adding women into the mix." Gwen thought about it. "You're right. I'm not attracted to women. I'm attracted to you. And I'm not ashamed of what we shared. Still, it's best if he never finds out. You know, not to give you false hope, but I know 4 couples who have divorced and remarried. If you want him back, find a way to reach out to him. Show him the new you that took so long to become. Take it slow, let him get used to you being around, and gradually move closer. You know him better than anyone else." Gwen considered this while the jet left Savannah making a plan. She promised herself that if this didn't work, she wouldn't try again. When she got back to her little apartment, soon she would start house hunting. But for now, she wanted the comfort of her familiar space. She often visited Aunt Daisy, helping her with family research while Marcus was in school. She spent nearly every Saturday with Joshua and Hildy, careful not to mention Hardy. They understood, but sometimes his name would come up. Once, she overheard her female cousins talking about Hardy and a woman named Bonnie. How does he do it? First, he marries a wealthy woman, and now he's dating a state senator. What does he have that makes successful women so interested in him? Gwen felt a little flutter when she picked up a copy of the Sunday paper and saw a woman at a fundraiser with Hardy by her side. Local girl and now respected State Senator Bonnie Parker will be hosting a fundraiser for education in 2 weeks at the country club. There will be dinner, dancing, and a silent auction. Only 1,200 tickets are available, so get yours this week before they sell out. Hardy wasn't mentioned at all. Gwen made sure to secure 2 of the best seats, dressed elegantly, with a date. He was the new assistant district attorney brought in to take her place. Paul had spoken to her when she visited Karen and offered her a job. "What about the new guy?" she asked. "He's still in training, and I can already see he won't last. To put it nicely, he lacks confidence. Defense lawyers are walking all over him. I couldn't ask you to help him, could I?" Boredom led her to consider it a good idea. She became an unpaid consultant. It didn't take her long to agree with Paul. He needed help. She took him to the interview room and explained things. "Be strong, Jerry, or you might not get through your training. These people can be tough and don't think twice about breaking the law. Many of them can't be helped, and it's your job to keep them from causing harm. Get serious and do your job. Otherwise, you might want to look into a different career." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Paul was in the hall with a smile. "Do you still think you wouldn't make a good district attorney? Just think about it. I plan to retire at the end of my term and the position will be open. The Escobar case is still fresh in everyone's mind, and you are still regarded as a hero for standing up to the drug lords. I've got to run." He walked away, whistling. The next day, she stopped by Jerry's office. "Jerry, I need a date Saturday. Wear your best suit, get a haircut, and be ready at 7. I'll pick you up. Just so you know, it's not a real date. I just need someone to join me for a few hours. You probably won't have any luck, but it could help you be seen more positively in the community. You're attractive, and it might interest some women. Don't let me down." Before he could say anything, she left. When she returned, Karen was in the office and barely held it together until Gwen left. Then she burst out laughing. "Looks like she put you in your place. Don't let her down. She's got a lot more confidence than you do. Just a heads up. She's doing this because her ex-husband is bringing the guest of honor, and she's still got feelings for him. Be careful. He's tough and still cares about her." Jerry rolled his eyes. "Oh, great. Just what I need. This is going to be a difficult date. Do you think I can get out of it?" "Not at all. You're just eye candy. Smile, be nice, stay in the background, and everything will go smoothly. Behave, and she might not make you find your own way home. Enjoy yourself." She was still laughing when she returned to her seat. Karen talked to Paul, and he got 2 sets of tickets for himself, his wife Karen, and her husband, saying he wouldn't miss this show for anything. Gwen made sure she looked great. She had Jerry wait until dinner was about to start before entering, walking in just as everyone was seated and passing the main table on her way to hers. He was there with one of the most beautiful women she had ever seen. Was she really a state senator? The woman had her hand on his arm, quietly laughing at something he said. When he looked up, their eyes met. Time seemed to slow down, and she stumbled a bit. Then they were seated. It was a miserable evening. She had a clear view and watched as the woman flirted with him. "Why don't you just take him right there?" she thought as her hand gripped her wine glass tightly, nearly cracking it. Paul, Karen, and their partners sat with her, and there was a brief fuss as they checked her hand and changed her glass. Hardy glanced over, looking a little concerned. Once again their eyes met, and he raised his glass in a friendly way. She chose not to respond. "Well, aren't you acting mature tonight?" Karen said in a serious tone. "You wanted to be here, so act right. Making a fuss won't leave a better memory for him." Her friend's advice calmed her down. She made polite small talk, chatting with others at the tables, people she knew from work. Aunt Daisy was there with Marcus. People were so used to seeing them together that it felt normal. They raised their glasses in greeting, and she smiled back. After dinner, they sat through a series of speeches. The main speaker, Bonnie Parker, made a heartfelt appeal for her charity. "Thank you for being here tonight to support my cause. Everyone here is a professional in one way or another. Think about your life without your education. Would you be as happy? Would your family have the same quality of life? Knowledge is power. Take my guest tonight. He faced many challenges but worked hard, got educated, and became a lawyer known nationally for his achievements. He was lucky to have someone help him fund his mission, seeking justice for those who need it most. Not bad for someone from Limestone County. There must be more people like Hardy Wilkes in the world. Let's help them reach their dreams. Now it's time to start dancing. Enjoy the evening and place your bids on the items donated to our cause." She stepped away from the podium to loud applause, stopping to shake hands and greet well-wishers. Hardy stood and held her chair, earning a friendly kiss on the cheek. Gwen felt a mix of emotions. The music played a delightful mix of old classics, waltzes, foxtrots, and an occasional lively Latin piece. Gwen was a wonderful dancer, and her dance card was full. She noticed Hardy from time to time, once with Aunt Daisy for a gentle waltz, and another time with Karen for a fast-paced number. She was always amazed at how someone so tall could move so gracefully. Most of his dances were with the respected senator, and Gwen almost missed a step the first time she saw them together. During a break, she found herself standing in front of Hardy. He smiled and took her hand. "How are you, Gwen?" Fighting the urge to say she felt unhappy, she replied that she was fine. "Good. I'm glad to see you back. Do you plan to stay here?" "Yes, I have family I care about, and honestly, I don't find New England winters appealing anymore." "Great. I'm sure I'll see you from time to time." He was about to leave when a woman approached him. "Hardy, who is this lovely person? Should I be keeping an eye on you?" She spoke in a light-hearted tone, unaware of Gwen's connection. "Bonnie, let me introduce you to Miss Gwen." He almost said something else but corrected himself. "Canaday, of the Boston Canadays. Her father is my boss." Gwen extended her hand. "I'm pleased to meet you. Do you know Hardy well?" Gwen shook her hand, smirking at Hardy, who looked a bit uneasy. "Oh, Hardy and I go way back. In fact, I can confidently say I've spent more time with him than anyone else until recently." "Really? We should chat. I can share stories from his younger days, and you can share what he's like now. Sounds fun." She pulled a card from her purse. "I'll be in town for a few more days for political events. Feel free to call me." Before Gwen could respond, Bonnie was whisked away by her group. Hardy offered Gwen a small smile before following her. Karen approached. "Watch yourself, dear. She and Hardy have a past together, and there's a story there you might not know. I don't think there's any romance now, at least not on his side, but she seems to be very fond of him, more than I remember." The band started playing again, and everyone resumed dancing. Gwen danced with JT Sheriff Will Robb and his wife Myrtle. As the last set began, she noticed Hardy speaking with the band leader and handing him something. He stepped in front of a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, it's almost time to call it a night. Let's give ourselves a round of applause for supporting this cause. We will play a few more songs, but by special request, we're going to perform this piece now. All you couples, married or single, here's your moment to shine. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time for the tango." The crowd quieted down, and Hardy stepped up next to her. "May I have this dance, Gwen?" He reached for her hand, and she took it, unable to speak. They had taken dance lessons soon after they got married. Hardy loved watching Gwen dance, but he said this particular dance was special, and he wanted to share it with only her. They practiced for hours and danced whenever they could. A few more couples joined them, but left after a while. Gwen was lifted and twirled as they moved together, almost as if they were connected by invisible strings. The band leader, experienced in his craft, signaled his musicians to keep playing. They danced for almost 8 minutes before the music finally stopped, their bodies moving as one for a final moment. He lifted her gently, holding her as if she were weightless. After he set her down, he kissed her cheek and walked off the dance floor. The applause and cheers continued for several minutes while she stood there enjoying the moment. Karen came over to her. "Wow, that was amazing. It felt like you were sharing a special moment on the dance floor. No one will forget this fundraiser anytime soon." Gwen sat down, feeling both tired and content as the band finished playing. She went to the restroom to fix her hair and makeup. While washing her face, Bonnie came out of a stall. "Miss Canaday, your dance was wonderful. I've never seen such a beautiful expression of love. Hardy finally told me who you are. My dad mentioned he was married, but I thought it was to someone local. I would love to talk with you. Here's my card. Please call me." But she never called. Feeling happy, she decided to take Jerry home. Aunt Daisy helped her find a house close by, in a lovely old part of town. It was a large home with 5 bedrooms, reminiscent of the Old South, complete with columns and a balcony overlooking a circular driveway. There was also a 3-bedroom bungalow that used to be stables, where a housekeeper and a maintenance man lived. They had taken care of the house and grounds for 15 years, and Gwen appreciated their help. At first, it felt a little eerie being alone at night, but she soon got used to it. It didn't stay empty for long. She gained a daughter. Maybe daughter isn't the right term, she thought. She was only 14 years younger, but definitely felt like a younger sister. This relationship filled a big gap in her life, giving her someone to love. Hildy called her one day. Gwen Marie, how are you? Gwen had been in the South long enough to know that when both names were used, something important was happening. If they used all three names, that usually meant trouble. I'm fine, Aunt Hildy. How about you? I'm doing okay. How do you like living in that big old house by yourself? It gets a bit lonely sometimes, but I'm getting used to it. That's kind of why I called. I need a favor. Aunt Hildy, you know I'd do anything for you. What is it? Don't make promises too fast, girl. Do you remember Melissa Sue? Of course I do. She was one of my first cousins I met when you invited me out. Is she in trouble? Not exactly. Her dad passed away in a truck accident when she was 7. And to be honest, her mom isn't taking care of things. She left 3 weeks ago with a guy who isn't any better, and nobody has seen them since. Melissa Sue was hoping she'd come back, but social services found out. I'd take her in myself. She's not a bad girl given what she's been through, but you know Joshua hasn't been well since Ronnie gave him that bump on the head. I'm worried about him. He can't work on the farm anymore, and we're living off his social security and what Hardy gives us. It's enough for us, but it bothers Josh that he has to rely on it. If no family steps up to help Melissa Sue soon, they'll take her into care. Where is she now? The county has her in a group home. It's really bothering Joshua. It'll take me about 3 hours to get things in order and get there. Stay calm, Aunt Hildy. Tell Joshua not to worry. I'll take care of her. Stop by when you're done. You know how much Joshua loves to see you. And Gwen Marie, it's nice to have family like you around. Bye. She called Limestone County Social Services. They told her that if they didn't have court approval, they couldn't release Melissa Sue. So she called Paul, and he helped her talk to the local judge. You need to hurry. Social Services closes in 2 hours. If they don't have the paperwork, she'll be there until Monday. She realized she wouldn't make it in time, so she reached out to Hardy. She got straight to the point. Hardy, they have little Melissa Sue in foster care. Her mom ran off. I have a judge willing to grant me temporary custody. But if I can't get it filed before they close, she'll be stuck there all weekend. Can you help me? Hardy, who had dealt with foster care more than he wanted to, quickly agreed. I'll take care of it. Meet me at Grandpa's. I'll have her there by the time you arrive. She could hear the relief in her voice. Thank you. Gwen, I need you to promise me that if you need help with family matters, call me first. Promise me. I promise, Hardy. See you soon. When she arrived, Melissa Sue was sitting on the front porch swing, looking sad and alone. Her mothering instincts kicked in, and she sat next to her, gently rocking. Soon, Melissa Sue leaned her head on her shoulder, and she wrapped her arm around her. Before long, tears began to fall, and Gwen held the girl tighter, promising her that things were going to get better, starting right away. She looked up and noticed Hardy watching them. It seemed like he had tears in his eyes, too. He turned quickly and went back inside. At that moment, Gwen realized that the girl in her arms could have been her own daughter, and her tears landed in the girl's hair. Dinner was quiet. Gwen could see that Joshua wasn't feeling well, and Aunt Hildy looked worried. She managed to get Hardy to step out onto the porch for a brief talk. I'm concerned about Joshua. Has he seen the doctor lately? She asked. Hardy shrugged. The stubborn old man won't let Hildy take him, he replied. I made an appointment for next week and told him I'd take him myself if he didn't go. He promised, but it doesn't seem like he means it. Gwen realized there was more than just tension between Hardy and Ronnie. She had heard nothing about the Escobar meeting, as the family had fallen silent. Roy and his old friends were still searching for Ronnie, but he had vanished. After dinner, she spent a little extra time with Joshua, hugging and caring for him. He grumbled, but it was clear he appreciated it. After everyone had given him a kiss and a hug, including Hardy, she gathered Melissa Sue. The girl didn't even have a suitcase, just 2 small trash bags. Once they were in the car, Gwen asked if she needed to get her other things. Melissa Sue looked down. This is all I have, Aunt Gwen. Do you have a washing machine? I didn't have money for laundry and everything needs to be cleaned. Gwen felt a surge of compassion. The poor girl had so little. She thought back to her own comfortable childhood and sighed. She promised herself that no matter where she ended up, her life would improve greatly. She parked at the local Walmart. It wasn't ideal, but it would work for now. Come on, sweetie, I need to get a few things. The girl was surprised that she was the focus of the shopping trip. Just a few things for now. We'll get you a whole new wardrobe over time, Gwen assured her. Melissa Sue protested, saying Gwen shouldn't spend money on her. Gwen chuckled. Sweetheart, your Auntie Gwen is doing just fine. I have plenty. Don't worry. This will probably bring me more joy than it will you. They picked out new underwear, 2 pairs of jeans, 2 tops, 2 sets of pajamas, and new sneakers. Then, they grabbed personal care items like hair mousse, shampoo, conditioner, and skin cream. Gwen held a tube of lip gloss, glancing at it before setting it back. She sensed that Melissa Sue might not have much experience with makeup. Not that one. The color isn't right for you. These 2 might work and you need eyeliner and foundation. Oh, never mind, I'll choose for now. You can decide later which ones you like best. Their cart was filling up. They finished their shopping in the snack aisle. Choose some snacks, but don't go overboard on the junk food. That plan fell apart quickly. She grabbed soda, popcorn, chips, and ice cream. To feel a bit better, she also added yogurt and some fruit. Melissa Sue was shocked when she saw the total for their groceries. She was even more surprised when they arrived at the house. How many people live here? She asked. Counting you, it's just 2. Come help me unpack the groceries and then we can choose your bedroom. She picked the room closest to Gwen's, still feeling a bit nervous. Gwen reassured her. Great choice! We'll be near each other and this room has a bathroom. 2 women sharing a bathroom can get cramped. Afterward, Melissa made sure to take her bath and brush her teeth. To her surprise, Gwen helped tuck her in. Typically, that wasn't something you did for a 15-year-old, but Melissa seemed to appreciate it. She sat on the bed and chatted for a little while, holding on to Melissa's hand. When Melissa started to feel sleepy, Gwen gently released her hand, kissed her forehead, and turned off the lights. As Gwen stood in the hallway, she imagined the house filled with children. It made her feel warm for a moment, but then reality hit her. She was almost 30 and began to feel the pressure of time. She regretted not wanting children. Now, the only man she wished to have a family with was no longer in her life. It took her some time to fall asleep. She even got up to check on Melissa twice, amazed at how peacefully she slept. Suddenly, Gwen woke up to find Melissa sitting on her bed. Good, you're awake. Mrs. Hendricks is making breakfast. She said you need to give her money for proper food now that a growing child is living here. Good morning, Aunt Gwen. Melissa leaned down for a kiss before bouncing out of the room. Gwen lay back, enjoying the moment. Mrs. Hendricks was her housekeeper and had offered to cook for her numerous times, but Gwen usually declined since she was alone. That was about to change, and she wondered how else her life might shift. Breakfast was lively, with Melissa and Mrs. Hendricks chatting happily. Gwen told Mrs. Hendricks she would set up a household fund and give her a debit card for groceries. I'll get one for your husband, too, so he can buy what he needs for his landscaping. She had bought the house at a good price due to the economy and its condition. While it was solid, the house and yard needed a lot of work. The previous owners had only done essential maintenance and little else. She saw Melissa's husband struggling with a rose bush and asked why he didn't just replace it. No money, he replied. She asked him to create a landscaping plan that included a swimming pool since she loved swimming. He wanted to do most of the work himself, but she convinced him to take on a supervisory role, hiring and overseeing others to help. Mrs. Hendricks said it was the happiest she had seen him in years. After breakfast, it was time for an important conversation. Melissa, do you want to stay here? She looked down, worried she would have to leave. Yes, ma'am, if you will have me. Gwen hugged her tightly. Good. Then we need to transfer you here for school. How are your grades? Melissa felt a bit shy. I like school, but my mom moved us so often that I fell behind in my classes. Gwen frowned a little, thinking of how unfair that was. She decided that some extra help over the summer could help Melissa catch up. We'll visit your old school on Monday to get your records. I'm not sure what area we're in, but I'll find out. She took a deep breath. I'm glad you want to stay. I want you to stay too. But if you live with me, we need to set some rules. First, Mrs. Hendricks is here to help, not to clean up after you. I expect you to keep your room tidy and not give her any trouble. I want you to go to school on time and do your best. If you need help, ask. If I can't help, I'll find someone who can. I know you'll make new friends, and you can invite them over and visit them as long as you let me meet their parents first. If they come here, they are your guests, and I expect you to take care of them. I remember being your age, and I know about peer pressure. If you make a bad choice, there will be consequences. I have my own plans, so I may not always be home, and Mrs. Hendricks might not be here either. I'll need your word. Can I count on you? Good. Now, another important thing. You are a lovely young lady, so I expect boys to want to be around you. No boys in your room ever, and no boys when Mrs. Hendricks or I aren't home. When you turn 16, you can start dating if I say it's okay. Until then, you can go out in groups. That's about it. Do you think you can follow these rules? Yes, ma'am. Great. Now, why don't you explore the house and yard while I make a few phone calls? You can call your friends if you want. She had only one call to make. Aunt Daisy, I need your help. She explained about Melissa and how she wanted to improve her situation. Daisy listened for a few minutes before interrupting. I understand. I'll be over in 30 minutes. Have her ready to go out. Without waiting for a response, she hung up the phone. She found Melissa chatting with Mr. Hendricks about flowers. Honey, please freshen up. Your great Aunt Daisy is coming by to meet you. Daisy arrived right on time with Marcus. She stayed in the car while Marcus rang the bell and told them to come out. Daisy had Melissa sit in the back to get to know each other better. Gwen didn't know where they were heading, so she chose to trust Aunt Daisy and spent the time chatting with Marcus about history. He was the lead intern on a Civil War site project and was very excited about it. They stopped in a part of uptown Birmingham that Gwen had passed through before but hadn't really noticed. Why are we here? She asked. Clothes. Melissa needs school clothes, and our family has been shopping here for 6 generations. It was a small store, but Gwen felt at ease, realizing the staff really knew what they were doing. They measured Melissa from head to toe, making notes. When they finished, they brought out a few dresses they thought would work well. Gwen, who had worn clothes by famous designers, was impressed by the quality. Daisy picked out 4 dresses without asking Gwen or Melissa. She took Melissa's hand and said, Now, dear, I've chosen the basics. You can choose 3 more. It took another hour of fitting the dresses and chatting before Melissa selected her last 3. Daisy suddenly stood up. Time to go. We have other places to visit. Melissa looked surprised. Aren't we taking the dresses with us? Daisy chuckled at her confusion. No, they'll be delivered later. They need to be fitted to your exact size. If your weight changes, it's easier to make them smaller than larger. Gwen didn't ask about payment at that moment, but planned to talk to Daisy later. Marcus was dozing in the car, saying he preferred a cave full of snakes to a dress shop. They left him and walked 3 doors down. They entered a shoe store and spent over an hour picking out 4 pairs, 2 flats and 2 with a small heel. The colors matched the dresses. Daisy mentioned that higher heels looked cheap on young girls, except for special events. Again, payment was not discussed. As they walked to another store, Melissa finally found the courage to ask Aunt Daisy why she needed so many dresses. Because at Pleasant Hill Academy, the dress code only allows slacks on Friday. The rest of the week it's dresses or skirts only, and slacks must be proper slacks, not jeans. Both Melissa and Gwen were taken aback. Everyone wanted their children to attend Pleasant Hill, but the waiting list was 3 years long. The school was well known for shaping young leaders in the South. Aunt Daisy, how will we get Melissa into Pleasant Hill with such a long waiting list? I'm a major supporter, and you'd be surprised at how much it costs to run the school. If it weren't for support from former students, it would have closed long ago. Our family has a long history with the school, and I didn't expect to see another family member attend. It means a lot to me. Shouldn't we ask Melissa if she wants to go there? Gwen suggested. Daisy scoffed. Your generation is too lenient with children. Let's see what she thinks about attending Pleasant Hill. Melissa Sue Wilkes, would you like to go? Melissa looked down, her voice soft. Yes. Daisy tapped her cane. Speak up, dear. My hearing isn't what it used to be. I'd really like to go to Pleasant Hill, Aunt Daisy, but I worry. I'm just a simple girl from a small town. What if I don't fit in? What if they don't like me? Daisy gave her a firm look. No one will be unkind to you for long. You have the strong Howe family name and some money backing you. And if needed, we have Hardy Wilkes supporting you. Anyone who acts foolishly won't last long. Now give your old aunt a thank you kiss. Melissa kissed her cheek and held her hand as they walked home, chatting quietly and listening carefully. When they got home, Daisy gave both Gwen and Melissa some tasks. Melissa was to visit Daisy twice a week to learn how to be a proper Southern lady, and Gwen was to join in at least once a week. You already have good manners when your Northern upbringing doesn't interfere. This will just fine-tune what you know. Now that we have the important clothes sorted out, she'll need normal, casual outfits. Nothing too flashy or revealing. Remember who you represent. You two can bond over that. Now give me a kiss and hug, and I'll see you soon. After Daisy left, Gwen apologized to Melissa. I'm sorry, honey, I just wanted to help. I didn't mean for her to take charge of everything. Melissa looked at her surprised. Are you serious? I just got a whole set of fitted clothes, a spot in an exclusive school in the South, and hopefully the support of two of the wealthiest women in the state. The best day of my life was when I met you. Thank you. I'll do my best to make you proud. Their hug was strong, filled with love and thankful feelings. Well, she smiled, what should we do for the rest of the weekend? Gwen had already thought about it. The first stop was a car dealership after asking Mr. Hendricks about his favorite brand. Since he liked Chevrolet, they went there first. By the time they left, he was driving a new 3/4-ton pickup truck for work. Mrs. Hendricks had always admired her sister's Dodge van, so they went there next and bought a top-quality town and country. It would be helpful for her to take Melissa places when she couldn't. Then they tested several four-wheel drive SUVs until she decided on a Range Rover. She had bought her cherished little car and thought it would be a perfect first car for a teenage girl. They went to some nice stores for her everyday clothes, and she started to think she might need more closet space. All the clothes she had collected over the years seemed like too much now. Gwen took her to a salon for a haircut and to pamper her hair. They also treated themselves to manicures and pedicures, which was a new experience for Melissa. On Sunday night, Gwen heard sounds from Melissa's room and went to check on her. Melissa was lying on the bed, tears in her eyes. Gwen quickly went to her side. What's wrong, sweetheart? Melissa sniffed and replied, I'm scared. I'm afraid this is just a dream, and I'll wake up in my old home. If I wake up here, no one will like me at school. I wasn't raised this way, and I don't know how to fit in. Gwen said, Honey, it might feel like a dream, but it's real. You'll be just fine. Remember, you come from two of the oldest families here, Wilkes and Howe. Their strength is in you. I've read a lot about them, and bravery runs in the family. Now get some sleep. I want you to be rested for tomorrow. The next day, Gwen and Daisy took her to school, and the headmaster greeted them warmly. I can't believe it! A Howe back in Pleasant Hill. Balance is back in the world. They looked over her grades and decided she would spend half the day in regular classes and half with a tutor to catch up for next year. She showed herself to be smart, willing to learn, and focused. Her biggest worry was letting Aunt Daisy and Aunt Gwen down. She made friends carefully. Aunt Daisy helped her build confidence by introducing her to her friends, many of whom were grandparents of Melissa's classmates. She even visited some classmates at their homes. Melissa was a bright girl, and she remembered the saying, It's better to be quiet and thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. She kept her words few at first, observing and learning. Soon enough, she had a group of friends and was doing well. The support and resources around her certainly helped. After a few months, Gwen hired someone to help her find Melissa's mother in Florida. One day, her mother answered the door at her trailer. Gwen presented her with a choice: sign over permanent custody or return to Alabama to face serious charges. If she signed, a small amount of money would be exchanged. Her mother recognized Gwen and quickly agreed. Before leaving, Gwen shared a picture of Melissa and another group photo from Pleasant Hill. She has a good life now. If she wants to see you, I won't stop her, but I will keep a close eye on you. Here's her cell number. As far as she knew, she never called. Right after Thanksgiving, she asked if Melissa wanted to see her mother. Melissa didn't even look up from her homework. I see my mother every day. Gwen rushed back to her bedroom, tears flowing. Once she was calm, she took Melissa shopping and bought her a high-end smartphone and matching tablet. One unexpected change for Gwen after Melissa moved in was her father. He cared about her and visited more often because she now had a bigger house. He even took her to Boston for a holiday. She returned with a newspaper showing them at a charity event. The article identified them as Greg Canaday with his granddaughter, Melissa Sue Wilkes. She framed it and hung it in her room, and from that day on, he became her grandfather. He saw Hardy occasionally, mostly for work. Hardy was thinking about starting his own office, but Greg advised against it. "You've got a good life. Why change something that works?" Hardy didn't have a good life. He had family and friends, but he felt lonely. When he finally filed for divorce, Gwen cried for 2 days when she got the final notice. He couldn't seem to find anyone who matched what he had with Gwen and stopped looking. Gwen began dating again and even let one man into her bedroom while Melissa was on a sleepover. Besides physical comfort, she felt nothing. They both moved through life without direction until, as usual, unexpected events brought them back together. Gwen was fast asleep when Melissa rushed into her room, crying. She quickly hugged her. "What is it? What's wrong?" "Grandpa Hardy had a heart attack. Aunt Hildy called. She must have dialed my number by mistake. They're airlifting him here. He should be arriving soon." They got dressed quickly and sped to the hospital. Hildy was there, nearly frantic. She held onto Gwen like she was drowning. It took 5 minutes for her to calm down enough to talk. There were issues with his admission because he was on Medicare. The strong negotiator in Gwen emerged as she approached the desk. "You have my grandfather here. What's going on with admissions? Never mind here." She took her checkbook from her purse, signed one, and handed it over. "Fill in the rest later. I want the best care, understand? If I find out he didn't get the best treatment possible, I'll take action against this hospital." A deep voice came from right behind her. "And after she's done, I'll step in. Now get moving." She turned and buried her face in Hardy's chest, crying. He gently stroked her hair and back. "It's all right, sweetheart. We'll get him the best care. Can you help Aunt Hildy calm down? I think Melissa Sue is really worried about Joshua." Joshua had heart surgery 4 hours later, right after a team of specialists arrived. So many relatives came that they almost needed police to manage the traffic, filling waiting rooms on every floor. The staff was amazed at how much love someone so simple could receive. Gwen was surprised to learn that he was 81. She thought he looked much younger. Before his surgery, he wanted to see Hildy, Gwen, and Hardy. "I wanted to talk to you all just in case. Hildy, you were like the daughter I lost. I don't know why you chose to care for an old man like me, but thank you. I care for you very much." Hildy broke down in tears. It was the first time he ever expressed his love for her. "Gwen, if anyone told me my favorite granddaughter would come from up north, I would have laughed. But you are important to me. I love you." Gwen started to cry as well. "Hardy, I'm proud of you. I tried to raise you right. Sometimes it didn't work out, but you turned out great." Hardy had tears in his eyes, too. "Just in case I don't make it, I need to say something. You two are silly. I've never met two people more in love yet so stubborn. You love each other but stay unhappy alone. Why haven't you thought about remarrying? I won't pressure you into promises, but please think about it. I hope I live long enough to see you together again. Now let me rest before they come to take care of me." They left quietly, sharing unspoken thoughts and hopes. Joshua survived, but stayed in the hospital longer because of an infection. Gwen and Hardy visited him as often as they could. They started having dinner together, sticking to safe topics like Melissa Sue, Joshua, Hildy, and the family. Hardy compared the experience to being cautious around a porcupine, moving slowly and carefully. Gwen felt optimistic, and Melissa even joked about her getting a new dad. Weekends at the farm became routine, where Gwen took on Hildy's role while she was at the hospital. Hardy began to smile more and started looking forward to spending evenings with Gwen. Joshua would chuckle and encourage them to enjoy each other's company instead of worrying about him. Gwen playfully teased Joshua when Hardy wasn't around, saying he might live long enough to say, "I told you so." Crystal Ann had finally moved on from Hardy and began dating a nice young man, a state trooper. She had dropped off some papers at his house and was getting her small revolver from his gun safe. Hardy bought a gift for Crystal when she moved into her new apartment. He taught her how to use it, and she turned out to be quite good. She and her boyfriend were going to the shooting range. The doorbell rang, and Hardy called out to Crystal, letting her know her boyfriend was there. "Don't outshoot him, girl. He won't hear the end of it." When he opened the door, he saw Ronnie Wilkes. Ronnie looked terrible, unkempt and troubled. It was clear he had been struggling with serious issues. He had disappeared for a time, taking money and hiding out in Mobile. To cope with his problems, he turned to drugs and became addicted. He held a grudge against Hardy, blaming him for everything that went wrong in his life. When his money ran out, he resorted to stealing from vulnerable people. The police started looking for him after he got into trouble during one of these attempts. He needed to escape, so he stole from a drug dealer, taking cash, drugs, and a weapon. Hardy's first instinct was to warn Crystal, but before he could say anything, Ronnie shot him multiple times. Hardy fell to the floor, and Ronnie aimed at him again. Crystal heard the shots and rushed into the living room. She quickly saw what had happened. Without hesitation, she grabbed her pistol and fired. She missed, but just barely, leaving a mark on Ronnie's arm. Ronnie fled the house. Crystal didn't chase him. She dropped to the floor beside Hardy, crying out in panic. She quickly called 911 and then her boyfriend. He was almost at the house when he saw the car speed past. He called for help while finding a parking spot. When he arrived, Crystal was covered in blood, trying to stop the bleeding. He feared Hardy might not survive, but Hardy clung to life, barely. He was airlifted to the same hospital where Josh was. Gwen heard the helicopter and noticed the time. Hardy was late and hadn't called. She went downstairs to wait for him. As she walked past the nurse's station, she overheard them talking. "I heard they don't think he'll make it. He's lost a lot of blood. They said he was shot several times. If anyone can pull through, it's him. He's the toughest person I know. We might need to inform his ex-wife. They usually come by this time to see his grandpa, that grumpy old man in 412. Time seemed to stand still as she turned back to the desk. One of the nurses saw her and gasped. Gwen hurried to the emergency room. They could hear her cries echoing down the hallway as she rushed in. Just as the medical team wheeled Hardy inside, she pushed her way through, desperate to reach him. Despite their efforts, blood was seeping through the bandages, and he lay still, his blonde hair limp. For a brief moment, she thought he was gone, but his hand moved as if reaching for something. She quickly grabbed it, unwilling to let go. He seemed to want to say something. His arms weren't tied, and he managed to pull out the breathing tube. His eyes were open, but he was not aware of his surroundings. Blood was on his lips. One bullet had hurt his lung. "Tell Gwen! Tell—" He fell silent. Gwen remembered shouting that she loved him repeatedly until her words became a jumble. Suddenly she felt a sting, and then fainted. When she became aware again, she found herself in a bed, unable to move her arms and legs. Hildy, Daisy, Melissa, and many family members filled the room and hallways. "Where's Hardy?" she yelled, fighting against her restraints. Hildy and Daisy rushed to her side, trying to calm her down. "Calm down, dear. He's in surgery and will be for a while." "How long have I been out?" 3 hours. They had to sedate you to help Hardy. She began to plead for them to free her from the restraints. "Please settle down. You're not helping anyone like this. Your child is very worried. Just look at her. Be strong, be calm, and they will let you go. You have to promise not to try to see Hardy. He won't know you're there and it won't help you. Go see Grandpa Hardy. I'm sure he's waiting for you both." After about an hour, she began to regain her composure. Her training kicked in when she went to see Josh. She apologized for being late and explained that Hardy had been called away for a case and Melissa had a school emergency. Joshua noticed she was upset. "Don't worry, girl. Hardy will be back soon, I promise. I wanted to share something important with you. I made a will. I didn't include either of you because it was a surprise. I want you to have the farm, but only if Hildy can live there and you promise to take care of her. Also, in my will, I wish for you to name your first son Joshua Hardy Wilkes. Will you do that?" This made her cry again, but she solemnly promised to honor his wish. Hardy had a damaged lung, lost a kidney, and one bullet broken 2 ribs, while another injured his intestines, requiring a few inches to be removed. They also found out later that another bullet had hurt his hip bone. Despite all these injuries, he survived. He was in a coma for 6 days. Gwen, Daisy, Hildy, Greg, who came right away when she called, and even Roy took turns watching over him and Joshua. It was the first time every bedroom in her house was filled. Mrs. Hendricks was happy looking after everyone. A big search started for Ronnie Wilkes, but he seemed to vanish. When Hardy finally woke up and could think clearly, his first request was for Roy to take care of Gwen and Joshua. Roy smiled, leaned in, and said softly, "Don't worry about Ronnie, cousin. I've heard he won't be causing trouble anymore." Hardy smiled and shook his hand. Once he was awake, Gwen stayed by his side, only leaving to shower and sleep now and then. He complained, but she just smiled. "Oh, no, I'm here for you. You can't get up or push me away. You can try to ignore me, but you know that won't work." "No, Hardy. I want to do something I've long wanted to do. I want to know who you really are. Not the stories or the lies, just the truth. You can resist me if you want, but you're stuck here for now, and I'm not going anywhere. If you try to send me away, I'll just find another way to stay, so why not just talk? Maybe I'll hear so much I'll leave you alone forever, but I doubt it." He sighed and pressed the button for more pain medicine and went back to sleep. She was there when he woke up again. A week went by and he finally gave in just a bit. "Ask me one question a week and I will answer. Did you really do all those things they say you did before you joined the Marines?" The laugh that came was long and without joy. "If I had done everything they said, I would have had to start back when I was 10. Then why did you take the blame for it?" "I didn't. I just didn't deny it. Do you know the first rule of being feared?" She shook her head. "One person hurt can scare thousands. If people thought I was dangerous, they left me alone. The real troublemakers stayed hidden, and the authorities couldn't prove anything because I never really did it. People feared me, and that kept them away. Don't get me wrong, I did some bad things, but I never enjoyed causing pain. Sometimes just the thought that I might do something was enough. But I've seen you fight. You're pretty skilled at it. Where did you learn?" "My dad had a friend from the Philippines, a small island. He was in prison with him for a while. He was only 5 feet tall and maybe 100 pounds, but he was the toughest man I ever met. People in prison avoided him. He was an expert in 2 martial arts. He liked me and taught me a lot. He was a lonely man, and my family treated him kindly. Grandpa let him live and work on the farm for some time. One thing about their martial arts was they had no showiness. Every movement was meant to hurt or disable, and their skill with weapons was impressive. That's why people thought I was so cruel, because of the way I fought. Luckily, I never seriously harmed anyone, but I did break a few bones." Another week passed, and he hoped he might be set free. "Did you really hurt your sister and brother-in-law? And did you harm her partner?" Yes, and no. "You know how I feel about cheaters, and I was really young and foolish back then. I didn't really hurt her badly, but I did slap her. I really did hurt her partner, though. The only reason I confronted my brother-in-law was that he attacked me without warning one night. I gave him a good punch for that. He was embarrassed to admit he caught me off guard, so he told my sister I was dangerous, and they left. Why didn't you tell anyone the truth? Think about it. If people thought I could hurt my own family, what would stop me from hurting strangers?" "What happened with her partner?" "He tried to sneak up on me too, but he came at me with a bat and broke my arm. I was angry and warned him that if I saw him again, he wouldn't be so lucky. He left that night, didn't even take his things. His car was being taken away, so he just walked away. I found an old jacket of his and tossed it far away by a pond. That's how the rumors started." "Don't you miss your sister?" He paused for a moment. "Yes, she was my family besides Grandpa. We were very close, sharing a lot of tough times. I hear she has 3 children now. One is a teenager. Why didn't you try to make things right with her?" "We didn't part on good terms. She called me after they left and yelled at me saying she was ashamed to be my sister. I thought it best to give her space. Do you know the family thinks you pushed her away and she's scared to come back?" He grew tense. "She can come back whenever she wants. I would never hurt her again. It's her husband that keeps her away." The heavy conversation was exhausting, and they decided to end it for the night. Joshua gave Gwen his sister's number and she called the next morning. It was an emotional talk, especially when she learned about the health challenges they faced. "Would you please visit them? I know it would mean a lot to both of them." "I would love to, but I can't afford gas, even if my old car still runs." "Does your husband have a car?" She let out a short, bitter laugh. "I'm sure he does, but I have no idea where he is. He left almost 2 years ago and I haven't seen him since." "Things have changed since the last time you spoke to the family. You have some wealthy relatives now. There will be a rental car ready for you in Asheville by 10 tomorrow. It will be fueled up and ready to drive. Can your car make the trip?" "I think so, but I still won't have money for the trip." "There will be a debit card at the desk with the keys. It has $2,500 on it. That should be enough for meals and gas, right? Please, it would mean a lot to us. I guess I could, but make sure all the kids come. We really enjoy having more cousins around. See you tomorrow night. She wondered where she would fit everyone since her house was already full. Aunt Daisy stepped in to help. I have 9 empty bedrooms. It will be nice to hear children in the house again. Peggy Wilkes Smith and her family were amazed when they arrived. They were introduced to many people, but they knew they would forget most of the names. Gwen and Daisy took them out for dinner before getting them settled in. 13-year-old Peggy Jr. and Melissa quickly became friends. So they decided little Peg would share her room. Greg was surprised when he saw her. She looked like a smaller version of Melissa. Wow, those Wilkes genes sure make pretty girls. Too bad about the boys. Little Peg blushed but was happy to hear the compliment. She was excited when Melissa told her he was her great-uncle. He's from the north, but don't hold that against him. He's really rich, so be nice to him, and he loves to talk. Just wait until you meet your uncle. You'll wish you weren't related. Melissa Sue Wilkes, Greg and Gwen said together. But it was too late. She was already dragging her cousin to her room while sticking her tongue out playfully. They smiled at each other. You've spoiled her too much, said Gwen. Like mother, like daughter, he replied. It was true. Gwen had officially adopted Melissa 2 months ago. It was one of the happiest days of her life. She and Melissa cried happy tears all day long. The next day, they let Peggy go in to see Hardy alone. She stayed for 2 hours before she came out. Her eyes were red and puffy, but she was smiling, looking content for the first time since she arrived. Gwen went in and found Hardy with his head down, looking worn out. She hugged him softly, stroking his hair. He took her hands and kissed them gently, a familiar gesture she had missed. Thank you for this, dear. Dear? He called her dear for the first time in almost 3 years. Tears filled her eyes as she nuzzled into his hair. She felt that he was finding his way back to her. Hardy left the hospital and spent a month in a rehab clinic. He had lost much of his strength, and the journey back to feeling normal was very hard. He learned to cope with discomfort once again. While he was there, he had 3 unexpected visitors: Major Stein, Rabbi Bill, and Captain Ann Burnside. They greeted each other and made light comments about how everyone looked. You look tired, Hardy. You really should find some new interests. You're like a cat who's lived 9 lives. Major Stein smiled as he said this. Bill added some jokes of his own, but then they turned serious. Captain Burnside, could you give us a moment of privacy? Why don't you take his friend out for coffee? Yes, sir. She turned and left the room. Miss Cannaday, would you come with me, please? They stopped by the restroom on their way out. Once they made sure they were alone, they hugged warmly. Anne, it's so nice to see you. Why are you here? Officially, I'm the new assistant to Major Stein. Unofficially, I really wanted to see you. How have you been? I'm doing well. I'm a mother now, did you know? Really? When did that happen? About a year ago? Want to see pictures? By then, they had entered the coffee shop and ordered their drinks. Once seated, she took a picture of Melissa from her bag. Anne looked at the lovely young girl. Wow! What's going on here? She's beautiful. How old is she? 17. They grow up so fast, don't they? Gwen laughed. Stepdaughter? Her dad must be quite a guy. No, she's my adopted daughter. Her dad passed away when she was young and her mom left her. I ended up with her, but it turned out really well. No partner then? I was hoping you might have reached out. Gwen took her hands gently. What we had was special and beautiful, but it was a one-time thing. I'm grateful for it and that it was with you. But I do have a man in my life now, and things are getting more serious. Who is he? What's he like? Is he charming, successful, and does he care for you? Yes, and I think so. We both just got through tough breakups, so we're taking it easy. Does this mystery man have a name? Yes, it's Hardy Wilkes. Anne put her hand over her mouth in surprise. Really? Yes, really. We haven't said that to each other yet, but it's coming soon. I'm so happy for you. Tell me everything. She shared her life update since they last met. Wow, why can't my life be like that? It hasn't been all good, it was difficult. I felt like giving up sometimes, but I couldn't let go. I'm really hopeful for what's ahead. They spent more than half an hour chatting. Major Stein appeared concerned. Sorry, sir. There was a long line. That's fine. We're finished here. Major Stein shook Hardy's hand. Hardy, I wish you the best. Our meetings are over, but if you ever need to talk, just call me. Miss Cannaday, could I have a minute of your time? We can chat on the way back to the car. He realized he forgot his briefcase. Could you grab it for me, Captain? Thanks. Can you give us about 5 minutes? Sure. She understood he was letting her talk to Hardy. She hugged him tightly, giving him a warm kiss. It's so good to see you, Hardy. I'm really glad you're okay. I've missed you. Anne, I've thought about you often. How's your life treating you? She shrugged. You know, I'm married to the Army. I have 6.5 more years to go. Then I'll be free to find my soulmate. Just my luck, I found 2 good people, but they're already taken. Hardy smiled. If they're together, maybe you should try to get to know them better. Imagine the possibilities. She laughed, keeping a part of herself hidden from Hardy. Not really. They're too focused on each other. My time is up. I have to leave. If I don't see you again, I hope you find the happiness you deserve. Remember me well, and I'll remember you. It took her a moment to wipe away her tears. At last, he was managing to live again. He had agreed to stay with Gwen and Greg so it would be easier for him to go to his therapy sessions. Since he wasn't comfortable driving, they took turns driving him. Gwen used their time in the car to ask questions. Did you really take a couple of women away from Big Daddy? Yes, but not for the reason you think. I did it to teach him a lesson. He was starting to interfere in my business, and I wanted him to understand how it feels when someone encroaches on your life. I once helped a woman escape an abusive man. He hurt her badly. Big Daddy made her pay for it. She heard he was going to betray some of his relatives to take over their work while they were away. She took a big risk to tell me. He didn't get what he wanted and hurt her badly. I thought it was a fair trade, so I took care of him. She recovered quicker than he did, so I helped her and another woman get to safety. Were they thankful? The victim was. The other woman was not happy with how I treated them. Did you make them work for you? No, I kept them safe for 4 weeks. He had used drugs to control them, so I helped them get clean. I was far out in the country where no one could hear them, so I let them express their pain. After 4 weeks, I took them to Dr. Thomas for checkups. They both had minor health issues, but he helped them. What became of them? I took them to Montgomery, found them a place to stay, and gave them some money. I told them to live well and avoid mistakes in the future. Did they listen? One did, the one who was hurt. The other came back a month later and went back to a bad situation within 2 weeks. Some people are just hard to help. A week later, the other came back saying she felt lonely. She stayed with me for about a year before she met the man she married and moved to Mobile. They have 4 kids now. She told him early on about her past, and he was glad to know that he wasn't the only one with flaws. She fell in love with him right away. The next time they were in the car, she asked him a question that had been on her mind for years. Can you tell me the story about you and Crystal Ann? He surprised her with his answer. No? What? I said no. If you want to know, you should ask her yourself. Feeling brave, she decided to make the call. Crystal, Gwen here. Would you have lunch with me? It's about Hardy, and he knows I'll be calling you. Crystal sounded hesitant. Okay, but if you say anything bad about him, I'm leaving. It's not about him, it's about you and him. Please? 1 o'clock, meet at the gin. Don't be late or I'll go. The gin used to be a cotton gin. When cotton was replaced by synthetic fabrics, it sat empty for years. A chef renovated it as part of a city project, making it a lively place with its old brick walls and uneven wooden floors. Gwen arrived 20 minutes early, but still only slightly beat Crystal by 5 minutes. There was no small talk. They ordered and ate in silence. Gwen pushed her plate away, feeling too nervous to eat. Thanks for coming. Crystal was straightforward. I didn't come for you. I came for Hardy. I called him, and he said to tell you whatever you want to know. What do you need? Everything. How you met, how long you've known each other, anything you'd like to share. Let's get to the point. You want to know if I've ever been with him, right? Gwen felt embarrassed, but nodded yes. Short answer? No, never. And trust me, I'm just as attractive as you are. Why? Because he cares about me. Not in the same way he cared for you. I became like a little sister to him, and I could never change that. While you grew up with a silver spoon and loving parents, I grew up in a tough neighborhood with a mother who drank too much. Things were difficult but manageable until I grew up. She gestured to herself, making the man at the next table cough unexpectedly. Suddenly, I wasn't just the tough kid that guys had to deal with. I was someone they noticed. The fact that I was 13 didn't matter to them at all, and when I told my mom, she said it was part of growing up. My older brother hung out with Hardy a bit back then, so I knew who he was. My brother kept the troublemakers away while he was around, but he did something foolish and tried to rob a store on his own. The clerk pulled out his own gun, but when the chaos settled, he ended up with an injured leg and a ticket to prison for the next 6 years. There was one guy who kept bothering me whenever my mom passed out. I knew one day he wouldn't just stop at a few uncomfortable touches. I knew Hardy had taken people away from Big Daddy before, so I figured if I had to survive somehow, I might as well do it on my terms and try to make it safe. I tried to look my best, cleaned up, and went to see Hardy. He remembered me, talked about my brother for a bit, and asked if he could help me with anything. That's when I shared my plan to be someone he could rely on if he'd help keep me safe. I'll never forget his expression. He went from cheerful to serious in a heartbeat. He asked for my full story, so I told him about my mom, her boyfriends, and the struggles I'd faced. He told me to stay put, then came back with a woman. He instructed her to take me shopping, and she did. We picked out jeans, tops, sneakers, a whole new set of clothes. I even joked about when we'd get the working clothes, and she just smiled. I got to choose a little sundress and sandals, and I remember looking in the mirror and feeling like I looked older, maybe even grown up. She let me wear it back to Hardy's place. She paused, sipping some water and wiping her eyes. When we returned, Hardy asked her if she'd picked up everything he requested, and she nodded. He looked me over and asked if I liked my new clothes. I said yes, who wouldn't? Then he asked, "Did you get new underclothes too?" I nodded, not really thinking about it. "Show me," he said. I was surprised. Up until that point, I hadn't truly understood what I was getting myself into. I'd heard stories, but I wasn't prepared. Still, I decided to go along, thinking maybe he'd take it easy on me if I cooperated. I nervously lifted my dress a bit, trying to play along. Before I knew it, he stopped me. I hadn't even seen him move, but suddenly he grabbed me, and in an instant, I found myself turned over his knee. He gave me a stern warning, letting me know he'd never accept the kind of life I'd proposed to him. It was his way of making sure I understood that he wanted a different path for me. Afterward, he helped me up, looked me in the eye, and told me that if I ever tried something like that again, it would be much worse than a simple warning. Then he and the woman, who never gave her name, took me and my things to Aunt Hildy and Grandpa Joshua's. He made sure I was set up in a new school, supported me every week, and visited whenever he could. Even after he joined the military, he sent half of his pay home each month. I heard he visited my mom. I don't know what they talked about, but she didn't say anything against me not coming home. The man who bothered me? He got hurt badly. Aunt Hildy and Grandpa raised me, and when I graduated, Hardy paid for my schooling. I decided to become a paralegal and work for him so I could stay close. I care deeply for him, but he only sees a silly 13-year-old when he looks at me. Now you understand. One more thing. I was upset with you for taking him, and I was even angrier when you broke his heart. But I have seen you. You've changed and grown. He has never stopped loving you, and I know you two are spending time together. Just remember, if you hurt him again, there's more to it than you think. Thanks for lunch. She walked away without looking back. 4 days later, they were sitting by the pool. This was the only thing she had changed about the yard. She added it, thinking she might live there alone, and built a privacy fence for herself. But after becoming a parent, she had to limit her sunbathing to when Melissa was in school. Melissa and her friends loved the pool, and during the week and most weekends, it would be filled with laughing teenagers. She only allowed boys on weekends, and only when she was there. It was always busy. Melissa and her friends were pretty, so she understood why the boys came around. When one of her friends told her the boys were there to see her too, she switched from her usual bikini to more modest one-piece swimsuits. They still looked at her, and sometimes it was nice to see their reactions. Hardy spent a lot of time in the pool. It helped him feel better. He preferred to stay away on weekends, even when Gwen and Melissa asked him to join. His body had scars from the past, and he joked with Greg that schools could scare kids with pictures of him. He let her put lotion on his back, and she took her time, enjoying the moment. Eventually, he leaned back in the lounge chair. She lay there with her eyes closed, hoping he was watching her behind his sunglasses. When they were alone, which was happening less often lately, she wore her more fitted swimsuits. At first, she noticed it made him uncomfortable and teased him about it. "You've seen my body many times. Why should it bother you now?" He wore sunglasses, hiding his eyes, but his voice clearly showed his sadness. "Because it's not mine anymore." He stood up and walked into the house. She stayed there, surprised. For a while, she kept her distance, wearing more modest outfits. A week or two later, she put on a simple swimsuit, but noticed he looked a bit let down. After lying there for a few minutes, she got up with a sigh. "This suit is bothering my back. Can I change into something else?" "It's your house. You don't need my permission to dress how you want." She smiled when she returned, wearing a more modest swimsuit. She noticed his reaction. "He still cares about me," she thought, as she put lotion on his back, happy he couldn't see her expression. His recovery was going well, but she worried he might soon return to his own house. She, Melissa, and Greg planned to make his life so enjoyable that he wouldn't want to leave. She felt a bit envious of how close Melissa had become with him. "Don't worry, Mom, I never really had a father, so let me enjoy this as long as I can." Melissa even convinced him to speak at Pleasant Hill during Career Week. "Do you mind, Mom? You're there all the time." "He'll offer something different. You know, a boy used to flirt with me a lot, but then he stopped. I asked Cindy, my best friend, what happened, and she said he got scared when he found out my dad was Hardy Wilkes." "I'm sorry, honey, did you like him?" "Sort of, but if he can't handle my family, he's not worth it, right?" Gwen agreed, sometimes worrying that her family background posed problems. Except for that one time, she rarely mentioned it. Hardy enjoyed the moment and didn't object when she introduced him as her dad. She insisted he stay for lunch, and they were quickly surrounded by friends. Melissa had become quite popular because she remembered her roots and was kind to everyone, knowing life could change quickly. A few kids had to leave school because their families were struggling. She mentioned to Aunt Daisy about a girl she liked having to move away. Daisy looked into the family and the girl's grades, and suddenly a scholarship appeared for her and a few others. Melissa knew Daisy helped them, but kept quiet about it. The next time she was alone with him in the car, she asked something that was bothering her. "What is your relationship with Bonnie? Why don't you ask her? Why won't you tell me? Just like I don't talk about you with anyone else, I don't discuss other important women in my life. If Bonnie wants to tell you, she will. If not, it's not a topic we will explore." She still had the card from her at the fundraiser. She decided to call her. At first, she didn't recognize her, but when she mentioned Hardy, the memory came back. "I remember you now. Have you been dancing lately?" Gwen was glad the other woman couldn't see her blush. "No, not since that night. There's only one person I'd ever dance with, and he's not interested anymore." "Don't underestimate yourself. You didn't see how he reacted when she danced with others, especially your date. He wasn't pleased. How can I help you?" Gwen asked her to join for lunch, mentioning that Hardy wanted to talk. "Okay. I need to come home next week for some political business. Let's have dinner with my family on Sunday, and we can talk afterward." "Thanks. Where do your parents live?" She could hear the amusement in her voice. "Oh, it's easy to find. Everyone knows where the sheriff lives." "Will Rob is your dad?" "Yes, I thought you knew. Be there at 12:30. My mom hates to wait for dinner." The meal was nice, and the company made it even better. More surprises came when JT turned out to be Bonnie's grandfather. Afterward, they went to the Florida room, known as a sunroom now. After some casual chatting, she asked how long she had known Hardy. "Since I was 3, his mom took care of me while my parents worked. I grew up with him and Peggy." "Did you ever feel attracted to him?" "When I was around 12, I had a big crush on him. He was tall, handsome, and treated me like a princess. I didn't realize he was just being friendly. When he started dating at 16, I cried myself to sleep a lot. I would follow him everywhere. One summer day, while Peggy and I were picking blackberries for a pie, Hardy was helping his grandfather with some fencing. We didn't see the snake until it bit my hand. It was a copperhead, one of the biggest I've ever seen. Do you know what a copperhead is?" I screamed and pulled back my hand, and the snake came with it. I started to panic while Hardy tried to get it off. He managed to do so and told Peggy to get me into the Gator, a small utility vehicle. Hardy was only 15 and didn't have a license then. He helped me into the little truck bed. As he twisted to help, the snake bit him. He began to panic a little, not thinking clearly, and needed both hands to hold on to me. So he put the snake in his mouth, holding it behind its head. He still had it in his mouth when we zipped down the town's main street. A deputy sheriff and a city cop were right behind us, sirens going. He drove that little Gator straight through the emergency room doors, spat out the snake, and yelled that I had been bitten by a copperhead. Peggy was screaming that he had been bitten too, and just as soon as he gave me to a nurse, he collapsed. The local newspaper had a police radio. When they heard about a crazy kid driving down Main Street with the police chasing him, 2 photographers rushed out of the office and took pictures. It made the front page the next day with a big headline, "Snake bites man, man lives, man bites snake, snake dies." He actually bit the snake to save himself. If you go into Dad's office, you'll see a framed copy of that front page, along with the skin of the snake. He was the deputy chasing us just before he became sheriff. Now you understand why my father and grandfather take such good care of Hardy. He saved my life. When he got into big trouble, they used every connection they had. They ended up owing favors, but they kept him out of jail. I know you've seen his tattoo. He got it to remind himself to stay calm in tough situations. There was a long pause before she spoke again. He joined the Marines, and I didn't see him again until last year. Dad told me when you two got married, and all I could think was how lucky you were. I fell in love and got married too. He was a doctor in the reserves and was called up 5 years ago. He never came back. He wasn't supposed to be in dangerous situations, but he ended up in one anyway. I need to tell you something. The night of the benefit, I was with him. You guys were divorced, and I realized I still had feelings for him. We spent a few days together, but I knew things weren't the same, so we decided to be friends. I still care about him, though. He still loves you. I don't think he will ever love anyone else. Stop hesitating and go get him back. He almost lost his life because of you. Make all his suffering count. She stopped talking and hugged her for a few minutes. The ride home was quiet, both deep in thought. Finally, the day came. She stood in his doorway, watching him pack. She had just one question. When? Tomorrow. I can't thank you enough, but it's time for me to leave. You need to live your life. She was about to speak when she felt her dad wrap his arms around her. Not now. Look at Melissa. Melissa stood behind her, quietly crying. Greg pulled her back into the hall, giving Gwen and Hardy some space. You could just stay, you know. He turned away, his back stiff. No, I can't. It would be too hard on both of us. Why? You know I love you. Everyone in Alabama knows I love you. And everyone in the family, which is probably half the state, knows you love me. Don't give up, sweetie. I will never stop trying, not even if you threaten to leave. I'll always be right behind you until you realize that no one will ever care for you more than I do. Think about it. Gwen turned and left the room, leaving Hardy alone with his thoughts. If she had seen his face, she would have noticed tears welling in his eyes. Gwen had a plan bold, a little sneaky, maybe even a bit risky, but it was her plan. She continued to make sure he took his medication, and that evening, she added a little something extra to his water. It was a small dose of a sedative he used during his recovery to help with severe pain, strong enough to make him drowsy. She arranged for her dad to take their daughter, Melissa, out for a movie and late dinner, ensuring they'd have the house to themselves. With everyone else gone for the evening, Gwen set the scene. She tied his arms and legs to the bedposts gently with his ties. She lit candles around the room, creating a warm, calm glow. Hardy lay asleep as Gwen leaned close, giving him a gentle kiss, then a few more until he began to stir. His eyes opened as she was mid-kiss, and he became fully aware. He tried to move, but soon realized he was bound. "Gwen, what's going on?" he demanded, surprised. Gwen's eyes shone with determination. "I'm here to remind you of what we have. Tonight I want us to find each other again. You can be angry, you can shout, but you'll pay attention to me. I'm not giving up on us." With his head propped on pillows, Hardy watched as Gwen spoke openly, with a calm resolve. She showed him the new outfit she had chosen, twirling slowly and saying, "I got this for you, your favorite color." Hardy looked away but said nothing. "If you don't like it, I can take it off," she said with a smirk, and she slipped out of it, standing before him confidently. As Gwen spoke, she reminded him of the life they had once dreamed of together, the future she had imagined with him by her side. She told him of her regrets and her hopes, speaking softly but firmly. Hardy tried to resist, expressing frustration, but his defenses softened as he listened. She gently placed her hand on his, telling him, "All you have to say is that you're willing to try again, and I'm right here." Hardy stayed silent, conflicted but clearly moved. Gwen waited patiently, her gaze steady, giving him the space he needed to decide. Gwen looked at Hardy with determination. She took a deep breath, standing tall before him. "I'm here to remind you of what we once had, Hardy," she said firmly, keeping her gaze steady. "I want to know if there's still a chance for us, but it's got to come from you. I'm not going to walk away without knowing I tried everything." Hardy, still groggy from the sedative, struggled to focus but could feel the intensity in her words. Frustration showed on his face as he realized he was tied up. "Gwen, this is ridiculous. Untie me right now," he demanded, his voice strained. Ignoring his protests, Gwen looked at him, her expression softening. "I remember how much you loved being close to me, how much we meant to each other," she said quietly. "I want to feel that connection again. I want to know if there's still love here, Hardy." As Hardy lay there, he remained silent, his face a mixture of anger and something else, maybe reluctance, maybe hesitation. She released one of his hands, giving him the chance to free himself if he chose. "Fine," she said with a heavy sigh, stepping back. "I tried. I wanted to remind you of us, of what we shared. But if you'd rather hold on to this anger, I won't stand in your way. Goodbye, Hardy. I won't be here when you wake up." She turned to leave, her heart breaking, when she heard a soft whisper. "Wait, please." She stopped, her back still to him. "What did you say?" "Please, don't go," he said, barely audible. "I want you here. Let's try again." Gwen's heart swelled with relief as she rushed back to him, their embrace full of the emotions they had been holding back for so long. They held each other close, finally sharing the vulnerability that had been locked away. But just as they were caught in the moment, Gwen pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes with a gentle but firm expression. "No, Hardy. I need to hear it. I need to know it's real," she said. There was a long pause before Hardy finally spoke, his voice softer now. "I love you, Gwen. I never stopped." "Say it again," she replied, tears filling her eyes. "I need to hear it." He repeated the words, the weight of his emotions clear in each one. Finally, they held each other close, feeling a renewed connection, one they both knew had been worth the wait. "Show me that you still care, Hardy," Gwen cried out, her emotions finally spilling over. She collapsed onto his chest, her tears flowing freely. She took his face in her hands and looked him straight in the eyes. "Say it," she demanded, her voice breaking. "Say you love me and mean it." Hardy had managed to free his other hand, and he gently held her face, looking back with deep sincerity. "Gwen Marie Wilkes, I love you," he said firmly. "I'd shout it in church on Sunday, take out a full-page ad in the newspaper, or even tell strangers on the street about how much I love you. I'll do whatever it takes." Gwen laughed, a joyful, relieved sound. She felt truly happy for the first time in a long while. "That won't be necessary," she said with a smile. "Just tell me often and remind the family now and then." They lay close together, wrapped in a tender embrace, holding each other tightly. In the warmth of that moment, they both felt a deep sense of peace and belonging, eventually drifting into a restful sleep. Later, Gwen's father, Greg, and her daughter, Melissa, returned from their movie night, still laughing over the funny scenes they had seen. They noticed the open bedroom door and peeked inside. Greg paused when he saw Gwen resting peacefully on Hardy's chest, both of them sound asleep. Melissa quietly tiptoed over and gently pulled the covers up over her mom. "Maybe this isn't exactly what a young girl should see," she whispered to her grandfather, a smile and a few tears in her eyes. Greg chuckled softly, putting a comforting arm around her. "Actually, I think the best thing a young girl could see is the love between her parents. But yes, maybe a little more clothing wouldn't hurt." The next morning, Hardy woke up, feeling happier than he had in a long time. Gwen stirred beside him, wrapping an arm around him and giving him a light hug. "Good morning, my love," she whispered. "Did you sleep as well as I did? I think it was the best sleep I've had in years." He smiled, running his hand gently through her hair. "Like a rock. You wore me out, but I'm not quite back to my old self yet." She laughed softly. "Don't worry, I have a new kind of therapy planned for you. It'll be good for building your strength and energy. We'll schedule it mostly for evenings." Hardy chuckled. "I don't know. I've always liked early morning workouts." Just then, the door flew open and Melissa burst into the room, jumping onto the bed with a cheerful grin. Gwen quickly adjusted the blanket, laughing in surprise. "Good morning, Mom and Dad," Melissa said brightly. "Mrs. Hendricks says breakfast is getting cold and she has errands, so one of you has to take me to school. Oh, and Mom, if you're so concerned about modesty, maybe you should remember to close the door next time." They all laughed, and Hardy pulled Gwen close, grateful for the sense of family and the fresh start they'd found together. What a sight for a shy girl. "I'll probably remember this forever," she thought with a chuckle. She had to hold back her laughter as both of them turned bright red. "All right, hurry up and take your showers, but not together. I wouldn't want to explain to the school why I was late because my parents were in the bathroom." She dashed out before Gwen could say anything. Hardy couldn't help but laugh, and soon Gwen joined in. Then her expression grew serious. "Get ready for this." "What do you mean? Our kids barging in on us at the most awkward moments? How many kids are we talking about?" "Well, we have 5 bedrooms, and I don't like wasting space." 4 kids. That sounds like a lot, and we're not getting any younger. She playfully hit him on the arm. "Speak for yourself, but I do think we should start soon. I don't want you changing diapers when you're older." The looks they shared felt special. They both reached for each other just as Melissa walked back in. "Gee, do I need to separate you two? Mom, just give me your car keys. I'll see you later." "No way, you are not driving my car. I'll take you, but we are having a long chat about respecting your elders and the need for privacy." "I guess this isn't a good time to mention that I told Aunt Daisy you two are back together. She wants to see you at her house soon." Gwen's expression changed, warning Melissa that she had gone too far, and she quickly left the room. "Melissa, come back here right now!" They heard the front door slam, and she shouted something about waiting in the car. Hardy held Gwen, smiling. "Don't worry, she's just excited. You know how kids are these days. They can't keep quiet about anything." "Facebook, oh no. You know how many family members she has as friends? All of them. The ones who don't use computers will be getting phone calls soon if they haven't already." Gwen noticed a shift in his eyes. "Are you having regrets already?" "No, not at all. I just wished we had a bit more time to reconnect. We think we know each other, but 3 years is a long time. We've both changed. I just wanted some quiet time to adjust. Don't worry. I'll just tell everyone that you had to force me into this. That should keep them quiet." Gwen almost gasped. "Please don't mention last night to anyone. I'm a little embarrassed, but I was desperate. Still, it brought you back to me, so I don't regret it." "Don't worry, Gwen. I won't say a word. Think about how that would look for me. I'll tell you this. A reputation is often just a facade. You're a good person pretending to be a rogue. And honestly, being with the town's most notorious man has its perks. Now I need to leave or Melissa will be late." She rushed out while Hardy enjoyed a big breakfast. Mrs. Hendricks was happy her work was appreciated. Greg came in, got a cup of coffee, and sat across from Hardy, smiling. "Say it." "Say what, Hardy?" "That I was right, that you were wrong." He laughed. "I don't have to. You just did. Welcome back to the family." "Huh? Welcome back. It was close for a while, but they liked Gwen a lot more than you, so if you hadn't changed, you might have been out. They almost started a betting pool to see how long you could last. I'm glad we didn't. I would have lost. I thought you were a lot more stubborn." "Well, I'm glad to have given you guys some fun. Oh, don't be upset. One of your cousins will surely mess up soon, and then we'll have something else to talk about. In fact, I think I know what it's going to be, and no, I'm not telling you. You'll see soon enough." Gwen felt like she was walking into something serious. Marcus opened the door and pulled her into a big hug, kissing her cheek. "Congratulations." She rolled her eyes. "Does everyone know?" Aunt Daisy walked up behind them, tapping her cane on the floor for attention. "Marcus, if you're done hugging your cousin, please shut the door. My goodness, no manners at all. Come on, girl, we need to talk." They went into the parlor, a fancy room that was rarely used. This must be important. She took a seat at a small table piled with books. Come on, girl, we don't have all day. Surprisingly, Aunt Daisy didn't mention Hardy at all. In fact, she didn't say anything about him for the next 90 minutes. Gwen Marie, this is our year to host the commemorative cotillion. I can't believe it's been 10 years already. You are the official hostess, so you have a lot to do over the next few months. Huh? What great communication skills. Are you sure you're a lawyer? The commemorative cotillion of the Daughters of the Confederacy, girl. It's the biggest social event in Birmingham, at least for the older members of the social elite. Invitation only, full costumes. If a man has been in the military, he must wear a uniform, preferably one that matches an ancestor's rank. The higher, the better. We only have it every 2 years and combine it with the debut of young women at 16 and older. Melissa Sue will represent us. Any questions? Oh, a lot. I thought you brought me here to talk about Hardy and me, and I'm not even a member of the Daughters, am I? Why would I want to talk about you and Hardy when there are much more important matters? You got him back. Congratulations, I always knew you would. Could we please focus here? And yes, you're a member. You have been since last year. You're welcome. For the next hour, Aunt Daisy filled Gwen in on all the details. What was expected of her as the hostess? What was she supposed to wear? As the hostess, she needed to cover most of the costs. Many members had lost their wealth but still had a rich family background. She had to ask around and try to pay for as many guests as possible. But she wouldn't be alone in this. Daisy, Hildy, and 2 women she didn't know were ready to help her. There were also people to manage decorations, food, and entertainment. A historical expert would guide them on proper outfits. Basically, her job was to settle disagreements and write checks. Do you think you can do this, dear? She smiled slightly. Do I have a choice? No. Okay then, when do we start and how long do we have? You have 5 months. We have a lot to do, you know. Aunt Daisy was really enthusiastic, much more than Gwen had ever seen her. Look, dear, this is how you should look. The woman in the picture was stunning. She had a sunshade and a lovely shawl over her shoulders, wearing a magnificent dress. Another younger woman stood next to her, equally attractive. They're both so beautiful. Why do they look familiar? Aunt Daisy laughed. Because the older one is your grandmother and the younger one is me. I told you, besides the hair color, you look just like her. I know you will make us proud. That was us, but I won't tell you the year. Look at this. Aunt Daisy unveiled a painting that had been covered for years. It was a portrait from a photograph. The women looked radiant. Daisy sighed. This was my favorite family portrait. I covered it the day Ginny passed away. I'm going to have a new one made of you and Melissa to hang beside it. When I'm gone, you'll get all of this. You will inherit the family home and everything in it. Marcus and a few others will benefit from my money, but this will go to you. Please promise me to keep it in the family. 9 generations have lived here. I wouldn't rest easy if strangers take it. Promise me, Gwen. Gwen took her hands. I promise you, my dear Aunt Daisy, that as long as I'm alive, it will stay in the family, as a tribute to you, who means so much to me. For the first time, Aunt Daisy cried. She seemed a bit embarrassed. Gwen held her until she calmed down, then Daisy pulled away. Look at me. Such an old sentimental fool. You must think I'm losing my mind. Gwen wrapped her arms around her again. Please, Aunt Daisy, let me hold you for a moment. Daisy allowed it. It had been years since anyone had held her with this kind of warmth. She finally pushed her away. Go on home now, dear. You have a good man and a sweet child waiting for you. You don't know how lucky you are. We'll talk tomorrow. There's a lot to do. Now go on. Daisy sat quietly, looking at the portrait for a long time after she left, remembering happier times. When Gwen got home, she hugged Melissa, Hardy, and Greg tightly, offering no words. Soon she was busy preparing for and funding the cotillion. Some of the older members were skeptical about a newcomer leading the event, but Aunt Daisy shared her impressive family history, reminding everyone that it didn't matter where she came from. What mattered was that she was there. They agreed, especially since they knew if she felt slighted, there would be no event at all. Hardy and the men who were supposed to be escorts got a shock. The dance would feature traditional styles from the late 1700s and early 1800s, and they needed to learn them well. Tutors were hired, and practice sessions were set up. They would learn the Viennese waltz, the Virginia reel, the parade, and even the polka, which were popular dances of that time. This made things exciting for the younger crowd. They had to find dates quickly to attend the practice sessions. This resulted in a whirlwind of invitations, phone calls, and messages. Melissa received 19 invitations. Gwen spoke to her about it, noticing she hadn't accepted any, and asked why. "Most of these boys are just trying to impress me. They want to be with the rich girl, not me. I know I'm only 17, but Pleasant Hill is filled with families that want their kids to secure good matches without love being the focus. Isn't there anyone you like from school?" "Some. Believe it or not, a lot are nervous around me. Being the daughter of the Howes and Canadays with Hardy as my father figure makes them anxious. Some are just shy. There's one boy I like, but he doesn't even know I'm here." Gwen chuckled. "Sweetheart, as beautiful as you are, there isn't a boy in Birmingham who doesn't know about you. This is your special night, so ask him. Don't wait." That's not how it's usually done. Maybe it wasn't the norm back in 1850, but this is the New South. Women are more empowered now, so go ahead and ask him. The worst he can say is no. Hardy didn't come after me. I had to nearly pull him to the altar. Speaking of relationships, Gwen and Hardy were taking things slowly, spending time together. They often said they loved each other, but Hardy hadn't mentioned marriage, and Gwen didn't want to rush things. Still, sometimes. Melissa found her courage and approached the boy she liked. "Jimmy, I'm having some friends over for a pool party Saturday. Would you like to come?" James Gregory Madsen was nearly speechless. Melissa had been the girl of his dreams since her first day at school. He watched her grow from a shy girl into the confident young woman standing in front of him. He was so nervous that he could hardly speak. What?" "Pool party this Saturday at my house. Be there at 3, okay? My parents want to meet my new friends." He felt a bit intimidated. He had heard many stories about Melissa's dad, and knew her mom also had a strong presence. Yeah, okay, I guess." "Great. We'll have a barbecue and then roast marshmallows. See you then." Then, with her flowing hair and light perfume, she was gone. His friend stood there in shock. "Wow, Melissa Wilkes, I really believe in miracles now." "I'm not going." "Are you crazy? You have to go. The Queen of Pleasant Hill invites you to her home. You can't miss that. Your dad is going to be impressed." "I'm not in her league." "Come on! Nobody is really in her league. I'd do anything for an invite like that. You have to say you're going, or I'll make you." "You're not as tough as you think. I'll make you go if I have to. Just go. I'll think about it." When Jimmy mentioned he might go to a pool party on Saturday, his parents seemed only slightly interested. "That's nice," his mom said. "Do we know the family?" "You might. Melissa invited me. Dad, I think you know her mom, Gwen?" His dad almost choked on his drink, and his mom looked surprised. "Gwen Canaday Wilkes? The one who moved down here not long ago?" "Yeah, that's her. So, can I go?" His mom looked excited, thinking about the possibilities. His dad laughed and said, "Go ahead, have fun. But if that girl is anything like her mom, she'll have you saying yes, dear, in no time." Jimmy was a good-looking guy with tall stature, black hair, and striking blue eyes. He was active in sports, keeping himself in great shape. Some girls thought he might be shy because he hardly dated, but he simply didn't know how to act around them. At 2:45 on Saturday, he rang the doorbell at the Wilkes house. Gwen answered the door. "Hi, Mrs. Wilkes. I'm Jimmy Madsen." Before he could finish, Gwen shook his hand warmly. "It's great to meet you, Jimmy. Melissa talks highly of you. I know your dad. He's a great lawyer. Please, come in." She called for someone, and a tall man appeared beside her. "Jimmy, this is my husband, Mr. Wilkes." Wilkes. He extended his hand for a strong shake. "Welcome, Jimmy. Any friend of our girl is a friend of ours. Melissa is by the pool. Why not go join her? We will be out later." Gwen felt a rush of happiness when Hardy said, "Our girl." Yes, yes, yes. But soon she had other things to think about. 30 teenagers needed a lot of supervision. Most of them knew the rules. If it was just a few girls, they could wear what they liked. Gwen had noticed some bathing suits that were quite small, which seemed pointless. If boys were around, the swimsuits had to be more covered up. Gwen had even sent a girl or two home to change before. She was happy to see that even though the girls wore bikinis, they were still modest. Small groups came together, split apart, and changed places. Melissa held Jimmy's hand tightly, showing him around. For the first half hour, he seemed very nervous, but then he began to relax. Some kids looked at them with envy, and others with annoyance. 5 boys had asked Melissa to a dance, and she had turned them all down. Gwen understood how teenagers felt, so she kept a close watch on everyone. She knew there would be some shared touches and sweet kisses as kids paired off, and that was okay. Anything more was not. She saw a couple in the pool house, too close for comfort. After that, she banned them from the house. After the warning, things got easier. She knew many were being active, and she often worried about Melissa. She had talked with Melissa about relationships soon after she moved in. No one had explained things to her before, and she had even cried a bit as Gwen shared the information. They agreed that if she ever felt confused, she would come to talk. She also said she was too young to rush into anything. Because of her experiences, Melissa was not quite ready for grown-up things, and Gwen wanted her to take her time. Gwen remembered her own youth and knew that if Melissa really wanted to, she could find a way. For now, Gwen believed Melissa was still innocent, but one could never be entirely sure. Trust was essential, and Melissa had given her no reason to worry. The party turned out to be a big success. The boys became quieter when Hardy joined them at the grill, but he was friendly, easing their tension. Now, Melissa and Jimmy were officially together. Just a glance at Jimmy showed he was very taken by her, and Melissa glowed with happiness. Gwen took Hardy's hand as they stood and watched. Tears filled her eyes. "She's growing up, dear. Soon she will be off to college and starting her life. I wish I had been there for her sooner. I wish—" She suddenly let go of his hand and dashed into the house, leaving him puzzled. Recently, she had been a bit moody. Was she having second thoughts? It would break his heart if she decided she didn't want him after all this. But she returned a few minutes later, her eyes dry. She took his hand once more. "Sorry, dear. Just feeling a bit emotional, I guess." "Don't they make a nice couple?" He couldn't help but smile. "Yes, they do. He doesn't stand a chance. When a Wilkes woman wants something, not even the strongest force could stop her. I know this from experience." She wanted to pull him closer right there by the pool. Instead, she squeezed his hand and gave him a sweet kiss full of promise. "Hey now! Is this the kind of example you want us to set? All right, here." Melissa grabbed Jimmy and gave him a quick peck. Hardy thought Jimmy might faint. "Get ready, son. You're with a Wilkes now, and no man has figured out how to handle them. I'm proof. I've been trying for years." Melissa and Gwen beamed with pride. Jimmy just blushed. "Dad, keep an eye on the grill. Something might burn." He quickly kissed both girls. "You're right. Something is getting too hot." He turned back to the grill while the kids who watched burst into giggles. Gwen pulled Melissa into the kitchen. After they settled down, they returned with platters. The tables were ready, and soon the hungry teens were devouring burgers and hot dogs as fast as Hardy could take them off the grill. The girls helped clear the table, while the boys helped tidy up. It was getting dark and cool, so everyone changed into jeans and t-shirts while Gwen and Hardy lit the fires. They had set up 4 portable fire pits across the yard. The sweet smell of cherry wood filled the air, and snacks like marshmallows, chocolate, and graham crackers made an appearance. Melissa made sure to be part of every group, with Jimmy following her around. Hardy and Gwen sat in the shadows watching. A couple of teens slipped away for a quick kiss but returned before anyone noticed, careful to follow the rules. Melissa and Jimmy stopped by and she waved. "Did they manage to eat without falling all over each other?" Gwen laughed. "Just barely. I think they wanted something else." Gwen watched closely as Melissa pulled him behind a large oak tree in the yard. A couple of minutes later, when they returned to the fire, Jimmy had the biggest smile. She took a moment to thank Gwen for her advice, clearly happy to have found her date for the dance. By 10 o'clock, everyone had left except for Jimmy. He was allowed to stay until 11 to help clean up. He offered to lend a hand, but they shooed him inside, saying they could take care of it. "What do you think they're up to now?" asked Hardy as he took the last trash bag to the bin. "If I had to guess, I'd say they are discussing how their tonsils are doing," said Gwen, laughing. "Come over here, dear. I want to show you something behind this oak tree." Greg was still around, appearing in no rush to head back to Boston. When Hardy got shot, he took a break from work and let his partners run things. He seemed to be away a lot, and when Gwen asked about it, he said he was taking long drives to enjoy the scenery. Lately, these drives turned into overnight trips. After learning that Hardy would be okay, he surprised Roy with a visit. "Do you know who I am?" Roy nodded. "Can I help you with something?" "I hope so. I'm looking for Ronnie Wilkes." Roy's expression changed. "Don't worry about it. This is family stuff and we'll handle it." Greg lost his temper. "That was my daughter he almost hurt. Hardy is like a son to me and now he's in the hospital. They're my family too, so this is my business. Are you going to help me, or do I need to look outside the family for help?" Roy and Harry, who was there too, were taken aback by the intensity of Greg's anger. "We usually take care of things ourselves," Roy said. "I want you to do that. Just let me know what you need. Money is not a problem. I can get the best legal help too, if needed. But I want one thing. I want to be there when you find him. Is that clear? Give me your word as a Wilkes." Feeling uneasy, Roy shook his hand. Greg handed him a gym bag. When Roy opened it, he saw it was filled with cash. "Wow," he said, surprised. "That's $200,000. If you run out, I can give you more. Use what you need, and if there's any left after we find him, keep it. Now get to work." Greg left the room without looking back. Roy and Harry exchanged glances, and Harry sighed in relief. "Glad he's not angry at me." Roy put out a huge reward to find Ronnie. Will Robb heard about it and was eager to be the first to locate him. He understood the stakes if he didn't succeed. Roy won the race. One of his younger cousins found the stolen car behind an old house. Greg, Roy, and 6 strong men from his team waited until midnight to move in quietly. Greg was stealthy. He has done this before, Roy thought, observing him. Ronnie never stood a chance. He was sleeping on an old sofa when they entered the room. He didn't even get to try to fight back. Roy was already attacking him when they pulled him away. Greg stepped forward. "I want you to tie him up and then leave. I'll handle it from here." Roy began to argue about family honor, but stopped when Greg suddenly pulled out a knife and held it close to his throat. "Listen to me, Roy. I said I'd take care of him, and I will. I have paid for this. Just leave me 2 guys and go home. We're now all in this together, so it's the same family. Please, Roy." He kept his 2 strongest cousins behind. Greg had an intense look in his eyes as he walked out, making everyone feel uneasy. "Stay outside," Greg told the 2 men. "I'll be a little while." Ronnie came to and saw an unfamiliar man looking at him. The older man seemed like a businessman. Ronnie felt a wave of relief. He was still alive. There was a small fire in the old stove, and the warmth was comforting. The man smiled and introduced himself. "Good. You're awake. I'm Greg Cannaday. I'm the father of the woman you betrayed, and my son-in-law is Hardy Wilkes, the man you tried to hurt. You almost succeeded, but Hardy is very tough. I thought about letting him handle you himself, but I can't wait that long." Ronnie felt a surge of anxiety. The man went back to tending the fire. When the flames jumped, he paused to speak. "Let me tell you about myself. I grew up wealthy and became even more successful. My father wanted me to be strong, so he sent me to a military school. Being a rich kid in a Southern school taught me how to take care of myself and understand Southern ways. I loved that school, and I still support it. My family has a proud tradition of serving in every war since the Revolution. I joined the army right after school and served in Southeast Asia." He took a moment, lost in thought. "I did things there that haunt me. I ran a special team during the night, but very few knew what that meant. I promised myself never to hurt anyone again if I made it home, but you have pushed me to break that promise. Tonight, Ronnie, you will face a terrible fate. It won't be quick or easy. You can scream if you wish, but I might silence you if it gets too loud. Are you ready?" Before Ronnie could respond, Greg picked up a knife from the fire and pressed it against Ronnie's cheek. The heat was unbearable, and a foul smell filled the air. Ronnie's loud cry startled one of his cousins, who nearly ran inside until the other stopped him. "Better not go in there." After half an hour of silence, Greg walked out, his clothes stained. "Help clean this up, will you? And don't tell anyone. If I hear you did, I would be very unhappy," he said as he disappeared into the night. The youngest cousin rushed into the house, came out, and vomited in the bushes. The older cousin slowly entered and stopped in shock. Ronnie was slumped on the floor. The knife was stuck in the wall above his head, and something hung from it. The man looked closer and saw it was a tongue. They never spoke of what they saw, only telling Roy that Ronnie had been taken care of. At later family gatherings, they stayed away from Greg. Gwen was busy getting ready for the cotillion, while Greg seemed to be around one moment and gone the next, wearing a strange grin. Meanwhile, Melissa was experiencing her first feelings of love, and Greg felt out of place. Jimmy pretty much became a regular visitor at their home, and they spent extra time practicing dance with Gwen and Melissa. Jimmy wanted to make sure he didn't embarrass her, and Hardy simply enjoyed dancing. Plus, it was good exercise. Hardy's health was nearly back to normal. He started working at the farm, taking care of things that were left undone when Joshua fell ill. There were always a younger cousin or two to keep him company when Hildy was away. She seemed to be gone a lot lately, which made Hardy wonder, but it was really none of his concern. She seemed happier than he had ever seen her anyway. Hardy hired 2 younger cousins secretly to help take some of the load off Hildy and to assist with Sunday dinners. The family gatherings kept growing until there were usually around 50 people needing to move outdoors. Hardy had a shelter made, large enough for about 100 guests, with a kitchen included. He spent a lot of time looking after the small herd of cattle he had bought. Herd might sound fancy for just 5 cows and a bull, but he had plans for them. They were Scottish Highland cattle, small and fluffy. Hardy loved their appearance. Greg had discovered them during one of his trips to Tennessee and could not stop talking about how they looked. Hardy searched for more information online and convinced the family to go see them. Gwen thought they looked cute, but was still too much of a city girl to go near them. However, Melissa and Jimmy quickly went into the pasture to pet them after asking the owner for permission. The owner didn't have any for sale, but suggested a few contacts. 3 weeks later, Hardy bought 2 cows in Tennessee, 2 in Arkansas, and a bull from Georgia. He was filled with joy when they finally arrived. One great thing was how Joshua responded to them. They were the first thing that really interested him since his surgery. He spent time with the cattle every day, treating them like pets. When he called them, they would rush to the fence, eager for some attention. When the first calf was born, his excitement was contagious, and he practically wanted to celebrate. Greg gifted him a computer, and at 82, Joshua learned how to use it. He started chatting with other cattle owners, looking for ways to expand the herd. Soon visitors would come over, usually for Sunday dinner, and they would talk about cows until everyone in the family felt they knew too much about them. To everyone's surprise, Greg bought the neighboring farm, claiming it was just an investment. Hildy was often there, overseeing the house renovations. He later purchased 10 more Highland cattle, getting Joshua's agreement to help care for them. The cotillion was coming soon. Gwen sometimes felt overwhelmed, even with the support she was receiving. The upcoming event was set to be held at a beautiful old plantation just outside of town. Although the plantation itself was no longer in use, the house had been transformed into a venue for weddings, corporate meetings, and private celebrations. The main attraction was the large ballroom, which could fit 300 guests. So far, 240 people had confirmed their attendance. About half of those guests needed financial help, and Daisy quietly provided the necessary funds out of kindness for old friends. Though Daisy kept this to herself, she sensed that this would be her last big event, and she wanted it to be special. Tailors had been working hard to ensure all the suits and dresses were ready. There were specific dress codes for the women. Those being presented could wear white, ivory, yellow, pale pink, or light blue. Older women could wear darker shades like red, blue, green, or even gold. The older guests, especially the widows, were encouraged to wear black. 2 weeks before the event, Gwen went for her final fitting. She was surprised when the seamstress mentioned that the dress needed to be let out just a bit. Gwen realized she had not been eating well and had not been exercising, but she had thought she was losing weight instead of gaining it. She told herself she would take better care of herself after the event. The next morning, she woke up feeling sick and barely made it to the bathroom. She had an important meeting at the plantation, so she took an antacid and went to pick up Aunt Daisy. Although she still felt unwell, she got through the meetings. However, on the way home, she had to pull over. Daisy insisted on taking her to the doctor, worried that she couldn't fall ill so close to the event. Daisy made a phone call, her cell phone being her only modern convenience. and a doctor was waiting for their arrival at her house. "Who still makes house calls?" Gwen wondered as he checked her temperature and blood pressure. He asked her several questions and smiled. "Please visit my office tomorrow, Mrs. Wilkes. I need to run a few tests to confirm your situation." Daisy looked worried. "What do you think is wrong with her?" she asked. "I don't think there is anything serious. A little time should help." "How much time?" "We have an important event in just a few days." "Will she be okay by then?" "Oh, I'm certain she will be just fine for your event. The timeline I'm thinking is about 7 to 8 months. He looked carefully into Gwen's anxious eyes. "I truly believe, dear, that you are about to embrace the joy of becoming a parent. When was your last period?" "It was supposed to be almost 2 weeks ago, but I've been irregular in the past, especially during stressful times." Suddenly, the reality of the situation struck her. "Oh my goodness, I'm going to have a baby!" She sank onto the sofa, tears streaming down her face. Daisy wrapped her arms around her, crying in support, filled with joy. "Hardy will be so proud. I wish I could see his face when you tell him. Hardy! What should I do about him? I love him and he loves me, but he hasn't said anything about marrying again and I'm too scared to ask. Tell him it's time to stop putting it off and take a stand. I believe he will step up to his responsibilities. No, I want him to marry me because he wants to, not because he feels he has to. What a mess." She lowered her head, crying again. Daisy cleared her throat. "Well, you could handle it in a quiet way. He wouldn't have to know." "Handle it? Oh, you mean end the pregnancy? No, even if he doesn't want it, even if he leaves me, this baby will be born." Daisy patted her hand. "Good girl. Now pull yourself together and think of how to tell him." Hardy noticed Gwen was quieter than usual that night, but decided to leave her alone, thinking she was lost in her thoughts. He mentioned his costume was ready, and she replied she had her last fitting too. They agreed not to see each other until the night of the event, hoping they would both be pleased. Still, he stole glances at her as she watched him. Hardy had been thinking a lot about marriage lately. He wanted to propose at the perfect moment, and he decided that would be at the dance. It would be a magical night. Unbeknownst to everyone, he had planned surprises for that evening. Finally, the night arrived. Gwen had been doing a lot of thinking as well. She decided she would tell him afterward that she was expecting. That way, if he reacted poorly, she could still cherish the memories of the dance. Gwen, Daisy, Hildy, and Melissa got ready at Daisy's house, wanting to keep their appearances a surprise for the men. Hardy, Greg, and Jimmy, dressed at their own place, called for the limo and soon arrived at the door. Daisy opened the door and escorted them to the parlor, leaving it open to showcase the stairs. Daisy got their attention. "Gentlemen, Miss Melissa Sue Wilkes." She came down the stairs like a beautiful dream in a pale yellow dress with ribbons in her hair. Jimmy was speechless, dressed in a stylish suit of the time. "Miss Hildy, Baker?" Hildy looked stunning in a red satin gown, white lace gloves, and a lovely hairstyle. She also seemed to glide as she walked. Greg was smiling brightly. He was her escort for the night, wearing a Union captain's uniform. There was a serious discussion among the group, but Greg insisted if he couldn't wear it, he wasn't going. It was finally allowed, as the committee said, to help heal old wounds. Daisy waited a full 5 minutes before announcing Gwen. "Mrs. Gwen Marie Wilkes." Gwen wore a shimmering gold gown made of layers of lace and silk with matching gloves. A single diamond sparkled at her throat thanks to Daisy. A simple lace shawl framed her shoulders. Her blonde hair was styled elegantly in a semi-bun. Hardy could hardly breathe. He would have bet anything that she never touched the steps as she came down. He wore an authentic major's uniform from the 1st Alabama, complete with sash. Gwen had convinced him to grow his beard back just for this occasion. The men each gave their partners a single red rose and were allowed to kiss their cheeks, careful not to mess up their makeup. They each also gave Daisy a rose, yellow, white, and red, and kissed her cheek as well. Daisy's eyes shone with more feeling than Gwen had ever seen. She wasn't traveling with them, she had her own escort. She teased Gwen by not saying who it was. When the limousine arrived at the plantation, it stopped in a special area where 4 carriages were waiting. The carriages were polished and shining, and the horses were well-groomed. "What's this?" Melissa asked excitedly. "This is my gift to the celebration. Jimmy, Greg, Will, when he arrives, and I will escort each guest to the front steps of the mansion and inside. You ladies and Aunt Daisy will greet them as they come in. Go on. We'll be there when the last guest arrives." He also hired 2 groups of photographers and videographers to capture the event. As official hostesses, they had arrived an hour early. Soon, carriages were coming through the gates. Everyone wanted to arrive in style, so no one drove. Gwen, Melissa, Hildy, and Daisy welcomed the guests, encouraging them to taste the small bites offered by servants dressed in clothes from the mid-1800s. The orchestra was warming up, and the celebration would start soon. The guests mingled, chatting and enjoying each other's company. There was a room where the adult ladies could enjoy drinks, and a separate room for the gentlemen. Gwen, for reasons Hardy didn't understand, wasn't drinking, so he thought it best to skip the drinks too. They chatted for about 45 minutes, keeping an eye on the younger guests. Suddenly, there were 2 loud knocks at the top of the stairs. It was Marcus, dressed to impress in period clothing, holding a large cane. He wore a small headset that was nearly invisible. "Ladies and gentlemen," his voice echoed throughout the ballroom thanks to a cleverly hidden sound system. "In the honored tradition of your ancestors, it's time for the presentations. Dancing will start shortly after. Please take your places. We will begin in exactly 5 minutes. The introductions were for the young women to meet the important people in local society. After each couple was introduced, they would go up a back staircase and then come down the main stairs to applause in the ballroom. The hostess and her family were always introduced last. People believed that your status in society was shown by the order of the introductions, with the most important going last. The young ladies went first. Marcus would tap his cane twice to get everyone's attention, then announce them. Melissa was the very last to be introduced. "Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Miss Melissa Sue Wilkes, escorted tonight by Master James Madsen." Melissa remembered this night for the rest of her life. She would tell her children years later that she understood how Cinderella must have felt. Next came the adult introductions, with couples walking down the stairs to polite applause. The dancing would start soon. Hildy and Greg were next to be introduced, followed by Daisy and her escort, and finally Gwen with Hardy. Hardy noticed that Gwen seemed different, and she thought he looked as nervous as a cat. The curtain opened, and Hildy and Greg appeared. "Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. and Mrs. Greg Cannaday?" Gwen was taken aback. Greg looked over his shoulder with a smile as the curtain closed. "We eloped last weekend." Daisy stood with a smug smile. Hildy had told her earlier in the week and made her promise not to spoil the surprise. Gwen was surprised again when Aunt Daisy stepped up with her escort. "Ladies and gentlemen, Miss Daisy Howe, escorted by Mr. Joshua Hardy." Daisy wore a black dress with red accents, and Josh was in a uniform to honor a brave ancestor. Most people knew Daisy would not have another event like this, and their applause showed how much they valued her. They stepped up to the curtain and Hardy asked Marcus to hold it for a moment. He held her hand tightly for a second before kneeling down. "Gwen, I wanted to show you how much I love you, but I can't find the right words. Just know, I never want to be away from you, my partner, my love. Will you marry me again?" Gwen looked deeply into his eyes and in a moment of surprise said, "I'm pregnant," then fainted. Marcus thought he heard the signal and tapped twice to announce them. "Ladies and gentlemen, your hosts, Mr. and Mrs. Hardy Wilkes." The curtain opened to reveal Hardy, still kneeling with an unconscious Gwen in his arms. There was a collective gasp from the ballroom, and Marcus quickly closed the curtain. 2 doctors in the crowd rushed to the top of the stairs. Gwen stirred, waking up in Hardy's arms while he was still on his knee. All the memories came rushing back to her. She hugged him tightly and kissed him many times, stopping now and then to express her love. When the doctors arrived, they smiled and said she was well enough to join the party again. They made a delayed grand entrance, and the news about the wait quickly spread through the ballroom. When the curtains pulled back, the audience clapped for 3 minutes. Melissa and Hildy waited for them at the bottom of the stairs. Melissa cheered, saying, "You go, Mom," while gently touching her stomach. "And you too, little brother or sister." Daisy, Gwen, Hildy, and Melissa gathered for a group hug, all getting a bit emotional, even Daisy. They headed to the restroom to fix their makeup. The cotillion turned into a special celebration for the Wilkes and Cannaday families. After getting the doctor's okay, they danced joyfully for the rest of the night. As all good things do, the ball came to an end at midnight. Many young guests hurried to change into festive clothes. For Melissa's 18th birthday, Hardy and Gwen had rented a smaller hall at the club nearby and turned it into a lively dance party with lights and a DJ. Hardy and Gwen were the official hosts, along with 4 other couples. They also rented rooms for everyone, including a special room for themselves. Greg and Hildy decided to head home to their renovated farmhouse. Joshua took Daisy home and spent the night. It was the first time in over 30 years that either had shared a bed. The kids had a great time and filled the dance floor until 2:30. Most had rooms reserved with their families, but a few, including Melissa, opted to go home. Gwen was not happy about that. "No one will be there. I'd hate for you to be alone." Melissa looked down, her cheeks turning red. Mom, I won't be alone." Gwen understood and gave her a knowing look, realizing her daughter was growing up. "Just be careful, sweetheart. Promise me." "We will, Mom. I love you, and please don't tell Dad, okay?" She stood at the entrance and watched as Jimmy arrived and opened the door for Melissa before heading back to their suite. As she walked, she absent-mindedly rubbed her belly, wondering how many more times she'd feel the bittersweet ache of watching her children grow up and step out into the world. And now, we return to the beginning of our story. The little girl finally got her hair done and ran into the arms of a man who had just walked in. "Grandpa? Was Grandma a Yankee?" He looked at her, the joy of his life for 40 years, and still saw her as a lovely woman. "Well, she was, honey, but she learned to move past it." Joshua passed away 18 months later, but he got to hold his great-grandsons, Joshua Hardy Wilkes and Gregory Cannaday Wilkes, in his arms before he went. He later said it was the proudest moment of his life. Gwen had twin boys first, and then a daughter named Annette Daisy Wilkes, who was named after Daisy and Hildy. Hildy was actually named Annette, but she never explained how she got the nickname. Daisy passed away shortly after Joshua was born, but not before she hung a portrait of Gwen and Melissa next to one of her and her dear sister Ginny. Marcus found her in a chair, looking at the paintings. True to her feelings, she never attended another cotillion. Marcus became very wealthy and married a girl he met in college. She was white and a Chapman, who was ironically another relative. They had 4 children. Gwen kept her home well-maintained and let the Daughters of the Confederacy use it as a gathering place. Occasionally, when she felt old or missed Daisy, she would sit beneath the portraits and remember. Greg and Hildy moved to Boston, but after one winter they returned to stay. He focused on raising Highland cattle and became one of the top breeders in the country. Hildy found a love for horses, and her Arabians were considered some of the best around. He passed away at 75. Hildy lived for another 12 years, but the spark in her eyes faded. Before she passed, she said her greatest comfort was knowing that Gwen had taken her place and that the family was in good hands. Gwen and Hardy lived in Birmingham for 8 years before they both retired to the farm. They stayed because Gwen served 2 terms as district attorney and 1 as a circuit court judge. It seemed Paul was right. JT passed away quietly. Will Robb said it was the first thing he had ever done quietly. Will Robb finally retired after 2 more terms as sheriff and gave Gwen a framed news article as a keepsake along with a tanned snakeskin. Alan Hovis spent 3 years in jail, marked by the stigma of being part of a gang, before he was found deceased in troubling circumstances. Vicente Escobar disappeared during a cartel conflict. He was never seen again, although there were rumors for years that he was living in Italy with his family. Ann Burnside retired with full honors and married a lovely woman named Victoria. They now run a resort in the Bahamas, and she seems happy, though sometimes she sees a blonde couple at the resort and daydreams. Melissa Sue Wilkes attended the University of Alabama and earned her law degree from Harvard. Joshua joined the Army and made it his career. Greg studied law but later entered a seminary and became a Baptist minister. Annette Daisy had a few difficult marriages before finally finding a good man. They have been together for 10 years. Roy miscalculated and ended up serving 10 years. June Bugg graduated while he was incarcerated. When his family needed help, a cousin was always there. Hardy and Gwen covered their living expenses until he was released. By then, he had retired, received a pension, and looked at the world with a smile. And Hardy and Gwen? They care for each other deeply and enjoy their time together. Gwen is the respected leader of the family, always ready to lend a hand. Many family members attended college thanks to special scholarships. Their Sunday dinners are well known and cherished. Hey everyone! Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss any of the exciting stories we have coming up. What do you think about the characters in this story? Let us know in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.